man can master every weapon under the sun and still be broken by a door that does not open. Tonight you meet such a man. Dust on his feet, hunger in his house, sacred words in his mouth, and a wound so small at first you could miss it, until it grows large enough to swallow kings. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in ancient Bharatavarsha. The air is warm already. Dawn has barely lifted, and still the heat is waiting in the trees, in the stones, in the packed earth beneath your feet. You smell ghee lamps first, then damp grass, then the clean, faint bite of river water carried from somewhere beyond, the grove. Smoke rises in pale blue threads from an ashram kitchen where someone is boiling grain in a blackened pot that has seen better yugas. Across the grounds, Vedic chanting drifts through the morning like woven cloth. Low, measured, steady, 100 syllables polished by repetition. You can almost feel them against your skin. Young students sit cross-legged on kusa grass mats, backs straight, eyes heavy with sleep. Their mouths shape mantras older than memory. Their jaws ache, their knees ache. Their teachers do not care. Ancient education is not especially interested in your comfort. Your bed is a mat. Your pillow is determination. Luxury has not been invited. And yet, this world is precise. Everything has its place. The fire altar, the water pot, the staff by the door, the deerskin seat for the sage, the bow hung high where it should not quite belong. That bow matters, because in this land, lines are meant to hold. A Brahmin guards sacred sound. A Kshatriya guards the kingdom. One tends the fire. One rides into dust and iron. One lifts a ladle. One lifts a weapon. Simple, neat, orderly, at least until one man arrives who was born for prayer and made for war. You feel the strangeness of it even before you know his name. It hangs in the air like the breath before monsoon rain. A priest should not move like a fighter. A master of mantras should not know the weight of a bowstring in his fingers. A sage's son should not carry anger like a sharpened blade wrapped in cloth. But he does. His name is Drona. Before you see him clearly, you hear pieces of him. The snap of practice shafts striking a target in the distance, the rustle of bark garments, the murmur of learned men reciting hymns beside boys who would one day stand in chariots beneath streaming banners. This is the kind of place where a prince and a poor scholar can sit under the same tree for a while, eat from the same leaf plate, wrestle in the same dust, promise each other impossible things. It is also the kind of place where those promises grow thin once one boy inherits a throne and the other inherits a leaking roof. Now walk a little farther, leave the ashram path, step out where the earth turns harder underfoot. The sun is higher now, and the smell of hot dust begins to rise. Cicadas sing in the brush. Somewhere, a peacock calls like a trumpet with opinions. Ahead of you stands a palace gate, tall, painted, guarded. You can smell sandalwood from within, crushed flowers, fine oils warming in the heat. The kitchen smoke of a royal house is richer than the smoke of hermits' huts. Even the air on this side of the wall seems better fed. And there, just before the threshold, stands a man in plain clothing. Not plain because he is simple, plain because life has scraped him down to essentials. His hair is bound carelessly, his face is lean, his eyes are sharp enough to unsettle you. He carries learning the way some men carry swords, quietly, constantly, with danger. He has come for help, only help, not a kingdom, not a crown, not processions, parasols, or musicians announcing his greatness. At this point, a pot of milk in the right house would do nicely. A little grain, a little dignity. Ancient glory is wonderful, but it does not boil into dinner by itself. He waits to be admitted. And when he is admitted at last, he steps inside, carrying something fragile. Hope, old hope, the kind preserved for years because a friend once spoke warmly in youth. Then the court laughs, not loudly at first, a ripple, a rustle of silk, a few lifted brows, the soft cruelty of people who have never had to count every handful of rice. The man who sits on the throne is no longer the boy from the ashram. He is King Drupada now, gold at his wrists, perfume on his chest, courtiers close at hand. And when the dusty Brahmin speaks of friendship, the king answers with the cold arithmetic of the world. Friendship, he says, belongs to equals. That is all. No blowlands, no sword is drawn, no conch shell sounds. But something falls all the same. You can almost hear it, the small, clean crack inside a brilliant man. That crack is where tonight begins. You turn with him as he leaves the palace, back through the same gate, past the same guards, into the same sun. But now, the heat feels harsher. The dust clings more fiercely to the ankles. Humiliation has weight. It sits on the shoulders. It dries the mouth. And in that long walk away from Panchala, something impossible begins to take shape. A Brahmin wound, a warrior answer. Soon, you will follow him back to the ashram, where sacred fires burn and hunger crouches quietly in the corner. You will see the child who asks for milk and the father who cannot bear that request. You will walk the roads to Hastinapura, where princes play beside a well and a stranger with blades of grass changes his fate. You will stand in the training ground while bows sing all day in the sun. You will watch one student become beloved, another turned away, another humiliated at the gate. You will smell sweat, sandalwood, horses, lamp smoke, wet earth after evening offerings. You will hear chanting at dawn, arrows at noon, court drums at dusk. You will stand in palace halls and forest clearings, in ashrams and war camps, in all the places where a man's wound follows him like a second shadow. And always Drona will be there, dust on his feet, fire in his chest, a soul trained to summon peace, carrying instead the knowledge of how to break an army. By night, he belongs to the world of sages. By destiny, he keeps walking toward kings. It should not fit together. That is exactly why you won't forget him. So settle a little deeper now. Feel the night around you. Feel the fan's soft hum if it's there. Let the world grow quiet. The lamps are lit. The chants are beginning. And at the edge of the ancient world, in a grove scented with smoke and river water, a boy is about to learn that love, poverty, pride, and weapons can all live in the same house. His name is Drona, and the dust has only just begun to rise. But to understand the man at the closed door, you have to go back, way back, to a river before sunrise. The water is black-blue in the half-light, smooth as hammered metal. Mist hangs over it in pale strips. The reeds whisper. Somewhere deeper in the grove, a conch sounds once, low and steady, and birds startle from the branches as if the note itself lifted them. You are barefoot on cold mud. That is the first thing. Not philosophy, not destiny. Mud, damp and grainy between the toes, a bite of chill that climbs from the ground into your bones. Ahead, boys in wet bark cloth and plain cotton step down the bank in a line, shivering with all the dignity they can manage. One of them is Drona. He's not famous yet. He's not feared. He's just a child with thin shoulders, serious eyes, and a face that already looks as if it has learned to listen hard. His father is Bharadvaja, a sage of enormous discipline, the kind of man who seems carved out of stillness itself. His hair is matted. His frame is lean. When he walks through the ashram, even the dogs stop scratching and watch him pass. The students lower their eyes. The smoke from the morning fire curls around him as if it knows where to go. And this is the house where Drona grows up. Not a palace, not a city, an ashram at the edge of the world. The huts are made of wood, packed earth and thatch. Their roofs need constant patching because monkeys treat repair work as a personal challenge. The sacred fire is never allowed to die. Clay pots sit blackened beside it. Bundles of kusa grass dry on rope lines. Deer wander near the tree line at dawn, flicking their ears. A pair of cranes pick slow, elegant steps along the marsh. Smoke smells of ghee, damp twigs, and old offerings. Every day begins before the sun. A hand on the shoulder, a murmur. Up, bath first, then prayer. You can feel it with him. The shock of the river against skin, not yet ready for wakefulness. The breath sucked in through the teeth. The quick pride of enduring it without complaint. Boys glance sideways to see who flinches. Everyone flinches. Some hide it better. Then the mantras. This is where the jaw starts to ache. Cross-legged on packed earth, back straight, hands placed just so, Drona recites with the other students while the sky slowly bruises from indigo into grey. Syllables rise and fall in measured rhythm. Not one sound can be swallowed. Not one accent can drift. The Vedas are not learned casually here. They are breathed in like discipline itself. If a boy grows lazy, Bharadvaja hears it. If a note goes flat, Bharadvaja hears it. If a mind wanders toward breakfast, Bharadvaja somehow hears that too. And breakfast, to be honest, is not worth wandering toward. Usually barley gruel, sometimes fruit if the forest has been kind, sometimes milk if a cow has yielded enough, which is rare enough to feel festive. Once in a while, there is warm rice with a little ghee, and the boys look at one another as if the gods themselves have remembered the address. You sit there beside Drona in the early smoke and hear the chant settle into his body. He is quick, very quick, not flashy about it. He absorbs things. A verse taught once will stay. A ritual sequence shown in the morning will return to his hands by evening without a stumble. Bharadvaja notices. Of course he notices. But Bharadvaja is not a father who throws praise around like flower petals. His affection is stern. It arrives in correction, in longer lessons, in the grave attention he gives the son who can bear more than the others. In some houses, love is a hand smoothing your hair. In this one, love says, do it again. So Drona does it again, again, again. The sun lifts, the cold burns off, the smell changes. Wet leaves become warm bark and dust. Bees begin their busy little arguments in the flowering shrubs. The younger boys are sent to gather fuel. Older ones grind grain, clean vessels, tend the fire, fetch water. The ashram breathes by work. And yet, there is another current running underneath all this. Because Bharadvaja does not teach only hymns, he teaches weapons. That is the strange thing, the thing that sits inside Drona's childhood like a live ember. 1 hour his father is instructing him in sacred intonations, the rise and fall of sound that opens a ritual correctly. The next hour, he is placing a bow in the boy's hands and adjusting the grip with the same careful seriousness. Not every ashram is like this. Not every Brahmin boy learns how to call fire through a mantra and then learns, that same afternoon, how to send an arrow through a moving leaf. But Drona does. You stand with him under sal trees while shafts thud into the practice post. The bark is scarred and dark from years of use. Resin smells sweet in the heat. Ants crawl up the trunk entirely unimpressed by human greatness. Bharadvaja shows him how breath and aim belong together. How the body must go still before force travels outward. How a weapon is not only wood, string, and iron. It is discipline given form. Later come the deeper teachings, the astras, not the everyday craft of war alone, but the invoked weapon, the missile yoked to mantra, the force carried in sound and mind and sacred precision. These lessons are not shouted in a yard. They are given in lower tones, at twilight, after ablutions, after the fire has been fed and the forest has gone purple at the edges. Drona listens with the stillness of a snake charmer holding a flute. He's born for this. You can feel it before anyone says it. The oddness of him, a Brahmin child whose fingers settle naturally on a bowstring, a boy trained for prayer who does not tremble before force. It should feel like contradiction. In him, it feels like inevitability. Around midday, when the chanting is done and work is done, and the teachers have turned briefly merciful, the boys become boys again. They run to the edge of the grove. They splash in shallows. They race through the long grass. They wrestle in red mud until someone's sacred thread is caked brown and somebody else has lost a sandal to the gods of swampy ground. This is usually where trouble begins, and one season, trouble arrives in royal form. Drupada comes to the ashram as a student, a prince of Panchala, sent to learn in the old way, stripped of palace softness, at least in theory. In practice, even before anyone tells you who he is, you can spot him. Not because he is jeweled. He is not. The ashram has no use for jeweled boys, but he carries himself differently at first, like someone who has always had servants half a breath away. His palms are softer. He blinks at the early bathing as if the river has personally offended his ancestors. The first night he sleeps on a reed mat and wakes up bitten in 6 places, looking betrayed by the entire concept of forest life. It is excellent. The other boys try not to laugh. They fail. Drona watches him with that quiet, measuring face. Drupada watches back. It could have gone badly. Prince and sage's son. Kshatriya and Brahmin. City Polish and ashram dust. Instead, they become inseparable. Maybe it begins with a lesson. Maybe with a shared punishment. Maybe with the simple fact that both are clever and lonely in slightly different ways. However it starts, it sticks. You see them together everywhere after that. At dawn, teeth chattering side by side in the river. At recitation, Drupada leaning a little too near because Drona never misses a syllable. At meals, the two of them crouched on the ground, sharing from leaf plates heaped with whatever the day has yielded. Grains, roots, a spoon of curds, if fortune smiles. Drupada, who grew up with trays of polished metal and attentive cooks, learns very quickly. that food tastes better when you are starving and 20 monkeys have tried to steal it. The prince adjusts somewhat. He still complains when the gruel is too thin. He still looks mournful when there is no salt. Once he steps on a thorn and reacts as if struck by Indra's own thunderbolt. Drona pulls it out and tells him, with perfect seriousness, that Panchala should probably appoint a royal thorn-bearer immediately. Drupada laughs so hard, he falls backward into the dust. That is how it goes between them. Easy, warm. They race through the trees until both are panting. They climb roots slick with moss after rain. They chase deer they will never catch. They practice with staffs in a clearing where sunlight falls in golden bars between leaves. They wrestle in mud, limbs locked, grinning and furious. Boys who still believe every contest can end in laughter. You are there in that green world with them. The smell after rain is all around you. Wet bark, crushed tulsi, river mud, wood smoke from the kitchen hut struggling against damp air. Cicadas scream from hidden places. A peacock calls from somewhere uphill, sounding far too dramatic for a bird that mostly struts and complains. In the evenings, when lessons are done, they lie on their backs in the grass and look up through branches at strips of darkening sky. Fireflies blink on. The sacred fire crackles nearer the huts. Older students murmur over verses. Bharadvaja's voice carries once, twice, then fades. And in that soft border between day and night, boys make promises, real ones, the kind that seem too natural to doubt. Drupada speaks of Panchala as if it is a glorious creature waiting for him, its halls, its banners, its elephants, its fields heavy with grain. He says that one day he will sit on the throne. He says it not with arrogance, but certainty, the way another boy might say that monsoon clouds will come. Then he turns to Drona and gives him the thing that will echo for years. When he is king, what is his will be Drona's too. Simple, warm, no courtroom in it, no conditions, no careful wording, just the open-handed certainty of someone too young to understand what power does to memory. And Drona believes him. Why wouldn't he? You would have believed him too, there in the dusk, lying under trees with your ribs aching pleasantly from wrestling and your stomach full enough for once, and your best friend beside you talking about the future as if it is a shared road. At 12, a promise is a house already built. At 12, friendship feels stronger than rank. At 12, the throne room is very far away. The years in the ashram turn like prayer beads. Hot season comes, and the earth cracks at the edges. The boys train under merciless white sun, while heat shimmers over stone, and even the dogs give up and lie beneath carts. Then monsoon arrives in a roar. Roofs leak. Paths turn to slick red clay. Frogs appear from nowhere, loud as temple drummers. Drupada slips twice in 1 week and claims the forest is trying to assassinate him. Drona tells him the forest simply has standards. Then winter, brief and sharp, mist over the river again, smoke clinging low, breath visible in the dawn. They grow taller. Their voices begin to settle. Childhood does not end all at once. It frays. One day Drupada's messengers arrive. The prince is to return to Panchala. There is no surprise in it. Boys sent away to study are always called back eventually. Father's age, kingdom's weight, duty clears its throat. Still, the ashram feels altered that morning. The horses stamp in the outer clearing. Leather creaks. A banner edge flickers through the trees. The men who have come for Drupada stand respectful but unmistakably royal, armed and groomed and smelling faintly of oil and polished gear, like another world already leaning in. Drupada's bundle is not large. Life here teaches you not to own much. Drona stands with him near the boundary of the grove, where the packed earth path leads away from the huts toward the wider roads. The wind moves through dry leaves. Somewhere behind them, a spoon strikes a pot. Somewhere ahead, a horse snorts and tosses its head. The two boys are trying very hard not to look like boys. Drupada tells Drona they will see each other again. Of course they will. He says Panchala is Drona's home too. Of course it is. He repeats the promise. When he inherits, they will share everything. His wealth, his pleasures, his kingdom's abundance. The future still sounds easy in his mouth. Drona says little. He is that kind of child, but the look on his face is enough. He takes it in, stores it, believes it all the way down. Then Drupada goes. The horses move. The guards turn. Dust rises from the road in pale sheets. Bright cloth flashes once, between the trees, then again, then vanishes. And just like that, the grove is missing a voice. You feel that sort of absence most at mealtimes first. One leaf plate where there used to be two side by side. One less laugh near the river. No prince muttering about insects as if they are a political faction. The ashram closes over the gap because that is what ashrams do. Fire must still be fed, water still fetched, verses still memorized. Drona remains. His life deepens inward. Without Drupada beside him, he leans harder into study. Bharadvaja gives him more and more of the difficult teachings, the sacred sciences, the precision of rites, the hidden applications of mantras, the use of arms beyond the ordinary. Drona's hands grow surer. His mind sharpens to a dangerous edge. Years slide. His father ages. Ash gathers in the lines of Bharadvaja's face. Not actual ash, though there is always some of that too. But the look of a man worn by vows, kept exactly. He still teaches with force. He still misses nothing. Yet time sits visibly on his shoulders now. And Drona becomes a man in the very place where he was a boy. There are no trumpets for such a change, no proclamation. Just one day, you notice the child's narrowness has hardened into restraint. His gaze lasts longer. The bow in his hand no longer looks instructional. It looks native. When the time comes, he marries Kripi. She is the sister of Kripa, that strange and formidable man who will later stand in royal courts and battlefields with the ease of someone long accustomed to improbable company. Kripi too comes from a life close to discipline and learning. She is not a woman raised to expect silk every morning and perfumes every evening. Still, marriage does not make poverty charming. It only gives it two faces instead of one. Drona's house is small. You should see it clearly. A low hut, walls of mud and reed, patched where cracks spread. A roof that keeps out most of the rain on good days and develops opinions of its own on bad ones. One cooking pot, one water jar, mats rolled and unrolled. A few wooden bowls, a storage basket that is often more hopeful than full. At night, wind presses at the thatch and finds its way in anyway. In monsoon, drops gather at the weak points overhead, then fall with irritating patience into bowls set beneath them. If the rain is hard enough, the whole hut smells of damp straw and smoke and wet earth. Clothes never quite dry. Grain has to be guarded from mold, like a tiny treasure under siege. Kripi manages what she can. She grinds, washes, mends, measures out each handful of grain with the care of a jeweler counting gems. She keeps dignity in the house because someone must. The floor is swept. The vessels are cleaned until they shine as much as clay can shine. The fire is coaxed from scraps. The little they have is arranged with attention. But attention is not food, and learning, for all its radiance, does not automatically become comfort. This is the old arrangement. The Brahmin holds knowledge. The world is supposed to sustain him in return. Kings give cows. Householders give grain. Students give honor. In songs and ideals, it sounds almost graceful. In real life, roofs leak. You can feel the thinness of the rice. You can hear the pause before someone says, "There is enough for today." Drona knows mantras that can summon terrible force. He knows the subtleties of ritual. He knows the use of celestial weapons. And some evenings he sits beside a nearly empty pot while smoke stings his eyes and the meal is too small to call satisfying. There is a particular humiliation in that. Quiet, repeated, domestic. Not the bright public kind. Not yet. This one arrives in little ways. A visit where a patron promises support and forgets. A ceremony performed well for gifts that barely cover a week. A glance from wealthier men that says holiness should be its own meal. The sound of another household's cow being milked at dusk while your own yard remains still. You are with him in those evenings. The sun has gone down, leaving a copper line in the west. Crickets start up. Smoke from neighboring fires drifts low and blue. From somewhere far off comes the ring of a bell tied to a grazing animal. Inside the hut, the air is close, warm, smelling of ash, boiled grain, and damp fiber. Creepy serves what there is. Drona eats little and says less. He's proud. Of course, he is proud. A man can be deeply learned and still wounded by the world's indifference to it. Sometimes, especially then. Yet, there are tender moments too. They do exist. They matter. A cool evening after rain when the roof miraculously holds. Creepy laughing once because a goat has stolen a scrap from the doorway and looks outrageously pleased with itself. Drona sitting outside at twilight, smoothing a bowstring by lamplight, while moths tap softly against the flame. A brass cup of water passed from one hand to another. The hush after prayers. The way married life builds itself from small repetitions more than grand declarations. Still, the pressure grows. You can almost hear it in the silence between husband and wife. Drona has learning that should earn him honor. He has skill that should open doors. Yet, the world remains narrow around him. And somewhere beyond that narrowness, in a city with banners and elephant stables and polished halls, there is a boyhood friend who once said abundance would be shared. The promise has not faded. It has ripened in memory, not into bitterness yet, not fully. For now, it glows like stored warmth, a possibility, a name he can still think of with softness, Drupada. Prince no longer, by now perhaps king or close to it. The forest and the palace have gone their separate ways, but memory is stubborn. It keeps old roads alive. Before that road is walked, more time passes, because life always makes you wait exactly where you do not want to wait. Seasons turn over the hut. The thatch is repaired, then repaired again. Bharadvaja's old world recedes behind Drona, though its disciplines never leave him. Creepers fear, the world of courts and arms, flickers at the edge of reach. Drona remains caught between them, a Brahmin by birth, a master of weapons by gift, a man of sacred learning, living with the very ordinary insult of not having enough. You stand at the doorway with him one evening as the sky darkens and smell the night garden, tulsi, damp soil, smoke from cow dung cakes, a faint sweetness from jasmine somewhere nearby that seems almost rude in its luxury. Bats tilt through the air. A lamp burns inside, small and wavering. This is still before the great break, before the child's hunger turns memory into need, before the road to Panchala, before a court hears the word friend and answers it with laughter. For now, all of that is waiting ahead, like thunder beyond distant hills. Here, there is only the hut, the wife, the tired man sitting just outside in the dark, one hand resting on his knee, the other absently touching the string of a bow he should never have needed so badly. And if you look closely, you can already see it. The shape of the future, beginning in the ordinary, not with war drums, with leaking roofs, not with curses, with unpaid dignity, with a cooking pot that scrapes too soon against the bottom. The night settles deeper around the little house. The river moves unseen beyond the trees, carrying moonlight in broken pieces. Somewhere in the grove, an owl calls once, then falls silent. Kripi finishes the evening chores. Drona remains where he is, listening to the dark. He has the Vedas in his memory, Astra mantras in his breath, a prince's promise in his heart. And not enough grain for comfort. That is how this part begins, quietly, with sacred knowledge on one side, need on the other, and a man in between, still hoping the two can somehow be made to meet. And then, one morning, his son starts crying. Not the ordinary crying of children, not the brief, offended howl that stops when someone is picked up or distracted with a pebble or a leaf, or the astonishing discovery of an ant. This is different. It comes from deep in the belly, thin at first, then sharper, then steady. The sort of crying that empties a room of everything except itself. Dawn has only just climbed over the trees. The hut is grey with first light. Smoke from the cooking fire curls low and slow because there is almost nothing on it. Kripi moves quietly, trying not to let the boy see how little there is to give. But children are not fools, not when hunger is involved. Ashwatthama is still very small. His hair is soft and unruly from sleep. His eyes are wet. His little hands open and close against the edge of Kripi's garment as he asks for milk with the full confidence of a child who believes such things must exist somewhere nearby. And that is the trouble. Milk does exist, nearby, just not here. You can almost smell it from other houses when the morning starts. Warm, sweet, animal-rich, the scent rising from clay pots, while mothers pour it into cups for children whose fathers are not trying to feed a family on dignity. Drona hears his son asking. He hears Kripi trying to soothe him. He hears the pause before each answer. That pause is worse than the crying. The air in the hut is cool from the night, but already you can feel the day's heat waiting outside, ready to press down on the thatch roof by noon. The floor is hard-packed earth. A single brass bowl catches the weak light. Somewhere beyond the walls, birds start up in the neem tree as if the world is perfectly well arranged. Inside, nothing's arranged at all. Kripi tries water first, then a handful of softened grain, then the old trick every poor parent learns before they want to. Touch the child's face, smile as if this is merely a delay, and pray that affection can do the work of food. Cannot. Ashwatthama cries harder. Drona stays still for a moment too long. That is the kind of stillness people mistake for calm. It is not calm. It is a man holding his pride by the throat and asking it whether it plans to feed his son. He rises at last and steps outside because he cannot bear the sound from within four walls. Morning in the settlement is already awake. You hear ladles tapping clay pots, the low cough of cattle, a woman sweeping her threshold with a reed broom, a priest chanting under his breath while washing at the well. The world goes on with criminal normality. A dog noses at a pile of ash. Two children run past barefoot, laughing, one of them with a white line of milk still bright on his upper lip. That little white line, it lands like an arrow. Drona watches them go and says nothing. He could recite hymns that hold the measure of the universe. He could speak the names of weapons kings begged to learn. And right now, if someone asked him the proper meter for a sacred verse, he might answer perfectly while his mind is fixed on one absurd, simple thing. A cup of milk. The day stretches forward. Ashwatthama's crying stops eventually, not because he is fed, but because children tire. That is its own cruelty. Hunger rests. It does not leave. By midday, the heat has thickened. The hut smells of dry straw, old smoke, and the faint sour trace of last night's gruel. Creepy sits in the doorway with the boy in her lap, rubbing his back in small circles. Drona repairs a frayed bowstring with fingers so precise they seem almost insulting in a place where precision cannot solve the main problem. No one says much. Husband and wife have crossed beyond complaint into arithmetic. How much grain? How many days? How long before the roof must be patched again? How long before the child is old enough to ask why other boys have things he does not? By afternoon, Ashwatthama is playing again, because childhood is heroic that way. Give a hungry boy a stick and an open patch of dust, and he will still find a kingdom. He goes to the other children. They race around the clearing. They shout. They invent wars and cows and demons and sages with terrible beards. Every stick becomes a staff. Every stone becomes treasure. You're standing at the edge of the clearing now, in the shade of a bent tamarind tree, watching what Drona watches. At first, it looks harmless, just children. Then one of the boys arrives with something in a cup. The others gather around him. There is excitement at once, because children can smell privilege faster than adults can. Milk. Thin perhaps, diluted perhaps, but milk. White in the clay cup, bright as moonlight. Ashwatthama sees it and stops. That stop. It is tiny, barely a heartbeat. But Drona notices his son moves closer, trying to look casual in the clumsy way children do when they want something very badly. He hovers at the edge of the group. He smiles too, quickly. One boy drinks, another licks foam from his lip. Ashwatthama says something hopeful. The other children look at one another, not wickedly. That's the worst part. They are not monsters. They are only children playing near the edge of cruelty, without knowing the ground has dropped away. One of them runs off and comes back with rice flour. Another adds water. They stir it in a small bowl until it goes pale and cloudy. It is a decent imitation from a distance, in generous light, to a child who wants to believe. They hand it to Ashwatthama. They tell him it is milk, and Ashwatthama believes them. Of course he does. He takes the bowl in both hands, careful, reverent almost. He drinks. You can hear the quick swallow. He pauses halfway through, as if savoring it, as if he has entered at last the ordinary paradise available to other boys every morning. Then his whole face opens. Joy. Total foolish, radiant joy. He finishes the bowl, and breaks into motion at once, running in circles, shouting to anyone who will hear that he has had milk. Milk. He has had milk. Just that. Nothing grander. He's delighted by his own belonging. The other boys laugh, again, not with full malice, with the shrill, careless hilarity of children who have discovered they can make a world and watch someone step into it. And Drona sees everything, the white paste still clinging to the side of the bowl, the powder not fully dissolved, his son's happiness, the laughter, the fact that the boy does not know. Something gives way in him then, not loudly, no dramatic collapse, no cry to the sky, no curse. It is quieter than that. A tightening, a settling, like wet clay being thrust into a mold and left there. He does not move toward the children. He does not shame them. He does not snatch the bowl from Ashwatthama's hand and tell him the truth. He cannot bear to do that. Let the child keep the joy for 1 minute more. 1 minute, that is all. So he stands under the tamarind tree while the afternoon hums around him with insects and heat, and he watches his son dance over packed dust with counterfeit milk in his belly. That is the moment. That is where the road begins. Creepy sees his face when he returns to the hut. She says nothing immediately, because she knows that face too. Not this exact face. No one has seen this exact one before, but she knows the danger of a silent man who has just reached the end of what he can excuse. The hut is dim by evening. A small lamp burns in a niche. Its flame smells of oil and singed cotton. Shadows climb the wall. Ashwatthama, tired from crying and playing and believing, sleeps curled on a reed mat with one hand under his cheek. Children forgive the day before sunset. Adults do not. Creepy serves what little they have. Drona barely touches it. At last, he tells her he is going to Panchala. Just those few words, and the whole room changes. Because she knows who lives in Panchala. Drupada, the prince from the old ashram days, the boy who ran barefoot beside Drona through wet grass after monsoon rain, the boy who wrestled him in the dust and lost half the time and laughed about it, the boy who ate from the same leaf plate, the boy who had clasped his arm and promised that when he became king, whatever was his would belong to Drona too. Promises made at 12 have a fragrance all their own. They smell like river water and leaf smoke and certainty. They do not smell like court perfume. Creepy listens. The lamp trembles. Outside, crickets start their dry music. She does not mock the hope. She is too kind for that. But she asks with her eyes whether hope has been paying attention. Drona answers by speaking of old affection, old bonds, old words. He reminds himself as much as her. Drupada had loved him once. That was real. Boys do not fake everything. Surely memory still lives in the king somewhere. Surely a friend received in hardship will not be turned away. Surely all those years were not just smoke. Creepy looks at the sleeping child. That decides it. By morning, Drona is ready. Ready is a generous word. He has a staff, a bow, a bundle, threadbare garments washed as well as poverty allows, and the rigid posture of a man trying to wear self-respect like silk. Creepy wraps a little food for the journey. Not enough, but enough to say that someone waits for him to return. Ashwatthama wakes and clings to his leg. Drona lifts him once, holds him longer than usual, and breathes in the smell of his child's hair, sun, dust, smoke, and sleep. Then he sets him down. The road to Panchala begins in village dust and opens into the long breathing spaces of the countryside. Fields ripple where crops have survived the season. Herds move under the watch of boys hardly older than Ashwatthama. Palmyra shadows lie flat and dark on the ground. By noon, the heat presses against the scalp and shoulders like a palm that will not lift. You walk with him. The road is rough underfoot. Fine dust gets into your sandals, between your toes. It clings to the hem of his garment. Sometimes there is shade under banyan trees where travelers stop to drink. Sometimes only open glare and the rattle of insects in dry grass. He passes merchants with bullock carts, soldiers heading the other direction, a wandering ascetic who carries almost nothing and somehow still looks richer than Drona, because at least that man's emptiness is chosen. At village wells, women pause to glance at him. A Brahmin? Yes, learned perhaps, but not prosperous. You can tell by how carefully he avoids asking for more than courtesy. Pride walks beside him like a second shadow. As the days pass, memory begins to sweeten the road. This is what hope does. It improves old scenes and edits new ones. Drona remembers Drupada as a boy under rain-dark branches, swearing eternal closeness. He remembers shared lessons, shared punishments, shared jokes. He remembers the prince promising, with all the magnificent seriousness available only to children, that rank would never divide them. The road likes such memories. It stretches them out like cloth in sunlight until they almost look durable. At night, Drona sleeps in rest houses when he can, under trees when he cannot. He hears jackals in the distance. He feels the earth still warm beneath him after sunset. Sometimes a breeze moves through the grass, carrying the smell of water and cattle and damp mud. Sometimes there is no breeze at all, and the dark sits heavily on the skin. In those hours before sleep, he imagines the meeting. Not extravagantly. He is not dreaming of jewels, only recognition. A face lighting with surprise, arms thrown around his shoulders, a voice calling him by the old name, a command for servants to bring food, milk, proper care, perhaps a place in the court, perhaps cattle, perhaps patronage. Enough, just enough. That tiny phrase rules everything now. Enough. By the time the towers of Panchala rise ahead, hope has become dangerous. You see the city first as color above the plain, then walls, then banners stirring in the hot wind, then the movement at the gates, guards with polished spears, traders waiting their turn, ox carts, horses, parasols, bright cloth, the general healthy bustle of a place where grain arrives on time and people expect tomorrow to function. Panchala smells rich from a distance. Even outside the walls, you catch it. Cook fires fed with good wood, ghee, spices warmed in oil, fresh dung from royal stables, flower garlands beginning to wilt in the heat, but still sweet. Sandalwood, smoke from shrines. For a poor man, wealth has a scent before it has a shape. Drona stops for one breath at the gate. Dust on his feet, travel sweat dried and dried again into the cloth on his shoulders, a staff in hand, a friend's promise in his chest. Then he enters. The streets. Inside are broad and busy. Shops fill bronze vessels, woven cloth, oils, fruits, ornaments. Water sellers call out. Temple bells ring somewhere deeper in the city. Sunlight flashes on harness and polished metal. Men in clean garments move with the loose confidence of those who do not count every grain before cooking. And Drona keeps walking toward the palace, toward the place where childhood either survives or ends. The palace rises white and red above the city, pillared and cool-looking even in afternoon glare. Guards at the entrance wear bright sashes and hold themselves like men who have never had to wonder where their supper comes from. Their spears are straight, their anklets gleam. Their expressions are professional in that slightly bored way that says they have seen many petitioners and expect one more. Drona gives his name. That matters less than he hoped. He gives the king's name too. Says he comes to see Drupada, who was once his companion in study. That produces a look, not refusal, not yet. More the sort of look given to someone claiming acquaintance with thunder. One guard disappears inside. Drona waits. Waiting in a palace entrance is its own education. Servants move in and out carrying trays of fruit, vessels of water, folded cloth, flowers. Somewhere nearby, meat is roasting, spiced and basted, and the smell is almost unbearable after days of travel food. A fountain splashes in an inner court. You hear birds caged for pleasure, not necessity. Silk whispers as attendants pass. Everything says abundance with the easy vulgarity of habit. At last, permission comes. He is led inward. The floors are cool stone under tired feet. Columns rise painted and carved. Garlands hang from doorways. The air is scented with incense and sandal paste. Light falls through latticed screens in patterned gold. Musicians are somewhere not far off, practicing softly. Even silence is expensive here. You can feel Drona straighten as he walks. He does not want to arrive looking broken. He enters the hall, and there is Drupada, not the boy, the king. He sits on a throne raised above the polished floor, wearing silk, jewels, and authority, as if all three were his natural skin. Courtiers cluster around him like a second garment. Ministers, warriors, priests, flatterers, listeners. Every throne gathers its own weather. Drupada sits in the center of it. For one impossible instant, Drona sees both faces at once. The boy in forest bark, the man in royal cloth. Then the second face remains. An attendant announces him. Drona steps forward and does what old affection makes him do before caution can stop him. He addresses the king as friend. The word falls into the hall like a clay cup dropped on stone. Not shattered, worse, heard. The court grows still. You feel it immediately, the way a room can change temperature without wind. Fans continue moving in servants' hands. A bracelet gives a tiny chime somewhere. No one speaks. Drupada stares at him. At first there is confusion, real confusion. He searches this lean, travel-worn Brahmin face for the boy he once knew. He finds him. You can see the moment memory arrives. Recognition is there, and with it, discomfort. Then comes the laugh. It is not thunderous. That would almost be kinder. It is shorter, sharper, edged with disbelief. The laugh of a man hearing the past, make a claim on the present, and finding the claim inconvenient. Drupada asks, in the polished manner of a king speaking before others, what Drona means by such familiarity. Drona, already flushed, already feeling the room lean toward him, speaks of the ashram, their lessons, their companionship, the promise made long ago. He does not beg at first, that comes later. First, he simply reaches toward what once was. Drupada listens. Then he answers. He says childhood companionship is one thing, kingship another. Time changes relations. Fortune changes them too. Friendship, he says, belongs between equals. It does not survive every difference. A wealthy man and a poor one, a ruler and a beggar, do not stand on the same ground simply because they once played together in the woods. He says it cleanly, calmly. That is the cruelty. No rage, no embarrassment openly shown, just order, classification. The world placed back into its proper boxes with the ease of a steward arranging vessels on a shelf. He might as well be reciting law. "What equality is there," he asks, "between a king and a destitute Brahmin?" The words travel through the hall. They touch every ear. No one interrupts. No one says the king remembers wrongly. No one says a promise is still a promise. The court remains smooth as oil. Drona stands there while the heat climbs up his neck into his face. His mouth goes dry. He is suddenly aware of everything at once. Dust at the hem of his garment, the sweat dried in the cloth at his back, the smoothness of the floor, the weight of eyes on him, the smell of incense, the sweetness of flowers beginning to turn in the warm hall. Humiliation has a physical form. It burns, it narrows the ears, it makes the body feel both heavy and hollow. You are standing there with him now. You hear the silence after the speech. It is the silence that comes when everyone agrees not to rescue someone. Drupada does not have him beaten, does not have him dragged away. Again, that would almost be simpler. Instead, he offers the sort of distant courtesy one gives any Brahmin stranger. Food for a day, perhaps a token. Formal goodwill without intimacy. As if they had never shared the same sleeping mat in the ashram during storm season. As if they had never laughed with river mud on their knees. As if those old words had been leaves blown off years ago and Drona was foolish enough to gather them back. Drona does not take the courtesy. If he said very much then, the court would have heard his voice break, and he will not give them that. He bows because protocol survives, even when affection does not. Then he turns. That walk out of the hall is longer than the whole road to Panchala. The polished floor seems endless now. Servants step aside. Guards avert their eyes with the exquisite politeness served for people who have just been quietly destroyed in public. Somewhere the musicians have resumed. Somewhere a conch sounds for a ritual in an inner shrine. Life continues in the palace with the insulting steadiness of rich places. The same sandalwood smoke, the same garlands, the same fountain. But nothing is the same. He passes the great doors, the bright courtyard, the gate, the guards, the city streets, the world outside, and every step hardens something. Not all at once. Stone is not made in a minute, but mud can begin drying the instant the sun hits it. By the time he clears the city, the man walking the road is not the man who entered. The evening wind moves across the fields outside Panchala. It brings the smell of trampled grass and distant water. Cattle bells knock softly somewhere in the dusk. The sky has gone copper, then rose, then that brief exhausted violet before night. Drona walks until the palace lights are gone behind him. Only then does he stop. He stands alone under a tree beside the road and lets the day settle into him. Ashwatthama's bright face with the false milk, Drupada's calm voice, the court's silence, the offer of courtesy without friendship, the old promise ground to powder under royal speech. Night gathers, a jackal calls. He does not weep. Some men weep when they break. Drona does not. He becomes precise. That is more dangerous. In the dark, he begins to understand a new shape for his life. Not yet fully, not with names and plans, but the direction has turned. The river has found another channel. He had gone to Panchala as a Brahmin trusting memory. He leaves Panchala as something else. Still a Brahmin by birth, still learned, still austere, but no longer willing to trust the world, to honor learning without force behind it. This is where the warrior truly wakes. Not on a battlefield, not with drums, not with a bow in hand, with a laugh in a throne room, with a child fooled by rice water, with the sick, unforgettable knowledge that prayer and scholarship alone will not protect the ones he loves. He sleeps little that night. The ground is hard. The stars are sharp above the trees. The wind cools toward midnight, carrying the smell of dry earth and wild grass. Each time he closes his eyes, the court returns. By dawn, the hurt has found its weapon. Memory, patience, skill, he has not lost those. If anything, humiliation has burnished them. The morning comes pale and quiet. Birds begin before sunrise. Mist lies low over the fields for a little, while before the heat drinks it away. Drona rises stiff-backed, dusty, unsmiling. He turns from Panchala and starts walking. Not home, exactly. Not yet. Toward whatever place will receive what Drupada has made of him. You can hear his steps on the road, steady, measured, almost calm. And if you did not know better, you might think nothing had happened at all. But something has, something immense. A father saw his son rejoice over counterfeit milk. A poor Brahmin carried his last clean hope into a king's hall and watched it mocked into ash. Now the road has him back. The sun lifts, the dust warms, and somewhere ahead, though he cannot yet see it, there waits a dry well, a group of princes, and a kingdom full of boys who need a teacher. For now, though, stay here a moment longer, with the road, with the morning, with the man walking through it in silence, carrying no treasure except his knowledge, and no companion except the wound that has finally found its shape. 3 days pass. The road keeps unfolding. Drona does not turn back. He sleeps where evening finds him, under neem trees, beside shrines blackened by old lamp smoke. Once beneath an ox cart, while rain mutters over the plain and the driver snores like a conch shell with a chest cold. By day, he walks east. The land changes slowly. Forest gives way to farms, farms to busier roads. Bullock carts creak past carrying grain, salt, oil jars sealed with wax. Merchants call to one another. Women in red and saffron carry brass pots from wells, water shining on their hips. Somewhere always a temple bell. The smell changes too. Less wild grass, more smoke, dung fuel, frying cakes, hot dust, sesame oil, horse sweat. He carries little. A bow, knowledge. Anger worn smooth enough to hide under the skin. And one more thing now, purpose. By the time the walls of Hastinapura begin to rise from the haze, he has the look of a man who has been burned without flame. Leaner, harder, quiet in a way that makes people step aside without knowing why. You are there with him when he first sees the city. Late afternoon, heat shimmering above the road, white dust on your ankles. The Ganga not far off, broad and slow, breathing coolness into the air. Beyond groves of mango and sal, the Kuru capital lifts its towers and banners into the gold light. Hastinapura, a city of elephant stables and royal courtyards, of priests and politicians and boys being raised to become dangerous men. Exactly the sort of place a master of weapons might be useful. Exactly the sort of place a wounded man might become powerful. He does not stride to the main gate and demand anything. He is too poor for arrogance and too proud for begging. Instead, he goes first, where kin still exist, to Kripa's house, to his wife's brother, to the one tie he has not yet worn thin. Kripa receives him, not with astonishment exactly, more with the look of a man who sees a storm cloud arrive and knows furniture will need moving. Kripa knows what Drona is. They grew up in the same rough country of discipline and weapons and sparse comforts. Kripa serves already at the Kuru court, lean and sharp, one of those men who always seem fully awake. He takes Drona in, gives him water to wash, gives Creepy a proper roof over her head, gives Ashwatthama food that is actually food, not a child's tragic imitation of it. That first evening matters. The lamps are lit one by one. Ghee flickers in bronze cups, rice steams in clay bowls. Lentils smell of cumin and asafoetida. A little curd, flatbread hot from the griddle. Nothing royal, everything sufficient. Ashwatthama eats until his eyes go heavy. Krippy moves more slowly than usual, as if relief itself has weight. And Drona, sitting in the half-light, says very little. But something in him loosens. Not the wound, never that, only the desperation around it. Night folds over Hastinapura. Somewhere in the palace quarter, a conch sounds for evening rites. The sound floats through the dark like a memory of order. Drona lies awake listening. In this city, boys are being trained. In this city, kings worry about succession and strength and loyalty. In this city, skill can become coin. Morning comes hot and quick. The great city wakes early. Wheels grind over packed earth. Cows complain. Stable hands slap horse flanks and mutter. Priests begin their chants before sunrise, voices low and steady as river water. Smoke from cooking fires climbs into the pale sky. Drona does not announce himself at court. Not yet. Some men enter kingdoms through the front gate. Others wait for fate to open a side door. The side door, as it happens, is a dry well. It is midday when it happens, a cruel hour. The kind where the stone throws back heat and the shadows look thin and defeated. The princes of the Kuru house have been at play in an open field outside the city, not far from a grove where the ground dips around an old well lined with worn stone. They are boys still, not innocent exactly. That family has too much iron in it for innocence to last, but boys. Sweating, competing, shouting, wrestling over every tiny victory, as if the fate of the earth depends on a game. Their ball goes into the well, one bad bounce, a scramble, a shout. Then down it drops, vanishing into the dark throat below. Everyone crowds the rim. They peer down. A long way below, the ball floats or lodges where no hand can reach. And because the world enjoys adding one problem to another, a ring falls in too. One prince leaning too far. A flash of metal, gone. Now there is a ball and a ring in the well, and a cluster of royal boys standing around it in the sun, each suddenly full of advice and entirely short on success. You can almost hear the chaos before you see their faces. Bama wants force. Of course he does. If a thing is stuck, pull harder. If that fails, perhaps uproot the well and carry it home. Subtlety is not his first love. Duryodhana refuses to be outdone. The twins are talking at once. Yudhishthira is already trying to make everyone calm down, which is like trying to organize monsoon rain with polite hand gestures. And Arjuna, still young, still not yet the man the world will fear, has gone quiet in that alert way of his, studying the problem instead of complaining at it. Around them, the summer air hums, cicadas shrill in the grass, dust clings to sweaty ankles. The stone rim of the well is hot enough to sting your palm. One after another, they try. A rope, too short, branches tied together, useless. A hooked stick, it slips. They argue over angles, depth, grip, whose fault it was, whose turn it should have been, and whether anyone ought to tell Bhishma yet. No one wants to tell Bhishma yet. Nothing makes a prince feel younger than explaining to a grandsire that he has been defeated by a hole in the ground. Then Drona arrives. not with trumpets, not with attendants, just a gaunt Brahmin in dusty clothes, walking past with the stillness of someone whose thoughts are elsewhere. At first glance, he is easy to underestimate. His garments are plain, his hair is matted from travel and tied back carelessly. He is not jeweled, he is not perfumed. He looks like a man who owns more mantras than sandals. But then he stops, looks once into the well, looks once at the princes, and something in the air changes. The boys feel it before they understand it. Some people enter a moment and make it smaller. They fidget, fill the space, scramble for attention. Drona enters and makes the world hold still. He asks what happened. They tell him, each in his own style. Too fast, too loud, Bhima with impatience, Duryodhana with annoyance, Yudhishthira with decency, Arjuna with precision. Drona listens. Then he does a mildly outrageous thing. He laughs, not cruelly. More like a man surprised that princes of the Kuru line can conquer absolutely nothing at noon except embarrassment. He tells them they should be ashamed of such helplessness. It stings, especially because he is right. Then he says he will retrieve both ball and ring. No rope, no ladder, no fuss. The boys stare at him with that particular skepticism children reserve for adults making impossible promises. It is a look that says, yes, yes, certainly, and next you will probably milk a cloud. Drona asks for a bow. There is one nearby. Of course there is. These are Kuru princes. They probably have spare weapons tucked behind every shrub. He takes it. Then he bends, plucks a blade of grass from the ground, and holds it between finger and thumb. Just a blade of grass, dry, ordinary. The kind that sticks to your heel and then dies there. He whispers over it, not loudly. The words are for the weapon, not the audience. The midday wind seems to pause. You can feel the heat on your neck, the smell of crushed grass underfoot, the faint, damp breath rising from the well's depth. Even the boys stop moving. This is the moment. You can feel it. Then he lets the grass fly. It drops into the well like a slender green arrow. A heartbeat later, there is a soft sound from below. Contact. He takes another blade, consecrates it, shoots again. It links to the first. Then another. Then another. One by one, he sends them down, each finding the one before it, making a chain where no chain should exist. Grass becoming weapon, weapon becoming tool, tool becoming wonder. The boys lean so far over the rim, they nearly create a second problem. At last, Drona draws up the chain. Up comes the ball, slowly, impossibly, swinging from its grassy tether like a fish caught on sunlight. For one suspended instant, nobody says anything. Then the field erupts. A dozen voices at once, shouts, questions, protest that this is not normal and ought perhaps to be illegal. Drona is not finished. He takes another shaft. This time, he aims not for the ball, but for the ring below. The metal glints faintly in the dark. Small target, awkward depth. He shoots. The arrow slips down, catches, lifts. Up comes the ring too. Now even Bhima is quiet. That might be the true miracle. The princes gather around him, with eyes bright and wild. They want to know who he is, where he learned this, what else he can do, whether he can split a hair at distance, whether he can strike by sound, whether he can shoot at night, whether grass is secretly more useful than everyone has been led to believe. Drona gives them his name, only that at first, and he tells them to go to Bhishma. Tell the grandsire what they saw. Tell him the Brahmin who did this is waiting. They run. Of course they run. Royal dignity vanishes quickly when boys have witnessed something marvelous. Sandals slap the ground. Dust kicks up behind them. One nearly collides with another. Duryodhana pretends he is not running as hard as Bhima. Bhima pretends this was a race all along. Arjuna is fastest without seeming to try. Drona remains by the well, quiet again. A crow lands on the stone rim and cocks its head at him like a suspicious accountant. From the city walls far off, a trumpet call drifts over the heat. Somewhere nearby, someone is pounding grain. Life continues, but Drona knows something has already shifted. He has announced himself, not by pleading, by skill. That is the only language this world has ever listened to for long. It does not take Bhishma long to come. When he arrives, the atmosphere changes a second time. Bhishma does not move like other old men. He is white-haired, yes, broad-shouldered still, grave as a shrine pillar, carrying decades the way some men carry armor. His presence arrives before his feet do. Servants fall quiet, guards straighten. Even sunlight seems to land differently on him. He comes with attendants, with princes clustered around him, all speaking at once, and with the calm face of a man who has seen enough wonders to distrust most of them. Then he sees Drona, really sees him, and recognition passes over him like a shadow over water. Not surprise exactly, recognition. He knows this Brahmin, not perhaps from daily closeness, but by lineage, by training, by the scent of old disciplines. The son of Bharadvaja, a master formed in austerity, a man of weapon lore, not one of the ordinary petitioners forever drifting through royal courts in search of patronage. Two old currents meet there beside the well. Bhishma asks him what has brought him to Hastinapura. Drona tells him enough, not all the ache, not the whole humiliation in Drupada's hall. He does not open his wound for public inspection, but he says who he is, and Bhishma hears the rest in what has become of him. The princes, meanwhile, hover like crows around festival sweets, unable to stop looking at the man who turned grass into iron. Bhishma studies Drona with the kind of attention that matters. A kingdom like Hastinapura needs teachers, needs masters who can shape royal boys before their pride becomes fixed in bad habits. Kripa is excellent, but a great court is always hungry. And there is something else too. Bhishma sees what skill sits before him, sees what the boys have seen, sees a weaponsmith for human souls. So he offers Drona a place, not merely lodging, not some temporary stipend, a post worthy of his knowledge. Teach the Kuru princes, train them in arms, make them dangerous in the proper way. Let the royal treasury bear the burden that poverty laid so cruelly on his house. Drona listens. His face barely changes, but inside him doors are opening all at once. Food for Ashwatthama, security for Kripi, respect, students, a court that will listen when he speaks, and yes, something colder too. Power has approached in the form of employment. He accepts. The deal is done there in the sunlight, with the old, well beside them, and the princes vibrating with excitement around the edges. By evening, Drona enters Hastinapura, not as a beggar, but as Acharya, teacher, royal preceptor. The city receives him differently now. Servants bow, chambers are assigned, weapons are brought and stored properly. His household settles inside walls that do not leak. Ashwatthama sleeps under a secure roof. Kripi, who has endured want with the hard grace of a woman given very few choices, moves through these new rooms almost cautiously, as if comfort might vanish if touched too quickly. You can feel the difference with them. the coolness of polished floors under bare feet, the smell of clean cotton, lamp smoke, sandalwood from household shrines, rice jars filled instead of echoing empty, oil enough for light after sunset, the simple luxury of not counting every handful of grain. For the first time in a long while, Drona has room to breathe. He does not waste it. Training begins almost at once. The royal grounds wake before dawn. The air is coolest then, touched by river mist. Horses snort in the dimness. Stable boys yawn and curry coats. Priests chant at the eastern altars, while the sky slowly pales from indigo to pearl. The princes arrive rubbing sleep from their eyes, trying to look fierce. Drona is already there, always already there. That becomes one of the first things they learn about him. You do not keep this man waiting. If he says dawn, he means before birdsong. If he says practice until your arms tremble, he means until your arms forget they belong to you. He begins with foundations, stance, breath, grip. No prince enjoys foundations. Foundations are repetitive, humbling, and completely immune to excuses. Royal boys prefer heroics. They want spinning arrows, moving targets, applause. Drona gives them foot placement. Bhima hates this immediately. He wants to hit something, preferably hard, preferably now. Drona makes him repeat posture, until even Bhima understands that strength without control is just a bull in jewelry. Duryodhana resents correction but craves mastery. He watches the teacher constantly, always measuring, always wanting to be seen as first among brothers and cousins alike. Yudhishthira does what he is told. Not brilliantly at first, but steadily. He has the rare gift of not believing. Discipline is an insult. Nakula and Sahadeva are graceful, attentive, quick to absorb smaller refinements. Their minds are clean and exact. Ashwathama trains among them too, the teacher's son moving in the line of princes with the special intensity reserved for boys who know they must justify their presence every single day. And Arjuna. At first, he is simply one student among many, bright-eyed, focused, alert. Then Drona begins to notice. Not talent alone. Talent can be flashy and lazy. Talent can preen. Talent can vanish the moment repetition enters the room. No, this is appetite. Arjuna listens like a thirsty man drinking. Show him once, and he wants the second lesson hidden inside the first. Correct his elbow, and tomorrow he returns with the entire shot transformed. Set a target at distance, and he asks about wind. Set one moving, and he asks about rhythm. Teach him in sunlight, and he returns wondering what changes in shade. This is not ordinary eagerness. This is hunger of the useful kind. You are with Drona in those early mornings when the ranges begin to reveal the princes one by one, the twang of bowstrings, the dry hiss of arrows cutting air, the thunk into straw butts and wooden boards, dust rising around bare feet, the smell of sweat, leather, oil, and sun-warmed cane. He watches all of them, always watching. A good teacher learns faces the way hunters learn tracks. Who tires early, who lies, who boasts before achieving, who becomes better under praise, who becomes dangerous under neglect. Drona's praise is sparse enough to be precious. When it comes, boys straighten for hours afterward. His displeasure is worse than shouting. Often, he does not shout. He just looks disappointed, and somehow that feels like being lowered slowly into cold water. He teaches them bows first, but not only bows, maces, swords, chariots, spears, the science of formations, the use of terrain, how to see not merely the target, but the battle around it. He is exacting, sometimes severe, sometimes brilliant in a way that makes the lesson itself feel like revelation. He can make a prince repeat the draw of a string 100 times, and then, without warning, show him such elegance in motion that everyone forgets to breathe. Bhishma watches from time to time. So does Kripa. Both can see the transformation. The boys are becoming warriors. And Drona is becoming something else too. Necessary. Days slip into months. The seasons turn with ancient indifference. Summer hardens the practice grounds until dust puffs around every landing step. Monsoon follows, sudden and extravagant, drumming on roofs, turning the yards to fragrant mud, forcing indoor drills where wooden weapons crack and ring under covered halls. Then the clear months come, bright and dry, good for long shooting distances and dawn air that bites a little before sunrise. Through all of it, Arjuna keeps returning. Earlier than the others, later than the others. If the lesson ends at sunset, somehow Arjuna is still there when the lamps are being lit. One evening, Drona notices that the boy is eating in near darkness and does not stop bringing food to his mouth when the lamp flickers out. A small thing, the sort of thing most people would miss. But Drona does not miss small things. If the hand can find the mouth in darkness, he thinks, why not the arrow find the mark? That thought changes everything. From then on, he begins teaching Arjuna beyond the ordinary measure. Not openly at first, just more. Finer adjustments, stranger drills, shooting by sound, shooting by memory, shooting after sudden distraction, shooting while tired, shooting while someone tries to provoke anger. Because an arrow loosed in vanity is a wasted thing. An arrow loosed in clarity becomes law. Arjuna absorbs all of it. One night, long after the rest have gone, Drona wakes and hears the faint, repeated snap of bowstring from the practice ground. He rises, steps outside. The night is warm, moonless, alive with crickets. The smell of damp earth lingers from an earlier watering of the grounds. A few lamps flicker under the eaves, not enough to reach the far posts. There, in darkness, Arjuna is practicing. Not dramatically, not for praise. The boy thinks no one sees him. He is shooting by ear, listening for tiny suspended targets stirred by the wind, then turning toward the sound and releasing. Miss, adjust, shoot again, miss narrower, again, again. The dedication of it lands in Drona like a struck bell. This he knows, this one. The promise he made nowhere aloud, but everywhere inside himself. The promise to gather his broken life and shape it into something undeniable, finds its instrument. He steps forward then, letting the boy know he is seen. Arjuna startles, then bows, ashamed perhaps of practicing without permission. But Drona is not angry. He is almost radiant, though his face reveals it only by degrees. He tells Arjuna to continue, then begins teaching him there in the dark. The lesson is unlike any before it. Night wraps around them. The palace is mostly asleep. Somewhere far off, a watchdog barks. The stars are hidden behind drifting cloud. Drona speaks softly, adjusting breath, foot, angle, concentration. Arjuna obeys with total attention. Arrow by arrow, the darkness becomes less an obstacle than a companion. The sound of each shot seems louder at night. Bowstring, flight, impact, a language. From that night onward, the bond between them deepens into something fierce. Drona does not love lightly. He is too scarred for easy tenderness. But he loves excellence when he sees it, perhaps because excellence is one of the few things that never mocked him. With Arjuna, he allows himself pride, not the noisy kind, the dangerous kind. He begins to shape the boy with intent sharpened to a point. Other princes notice. Of course they do. Royal households miss nothing and forgive even less. Duryodhana sees favoritism and dislikes it. Bhima shrugs at first. He has his own domains of glory and is not inclined to spend his life worrying about arrows. Yudhishthira notices and understands more than he says. Ashwathama feels it keenly. How could he not? A father's gaze is a kingdom in miniature, and now another boy shines in it. But Arjuna earns every inch. That is what makes it hard to resent him fully. He does what no one else does. He asks for more. He listens harder. He practices until his fingers roughen and split. He wants mastery with the terrifying sincerity of a person who cannot imagine stopping halfway. One day, after watching him hit target after target with a precision so clean it feels almost ceremonial, Drona gives voice to what has been growing. He tells Arjuna he will make him the greatest archer on earth. Just once, quietly, a vow placed between teacher and student like a sacred thread. The words go into Arjuna like fire into dry wood. You can feel the moment settle. Warm wind on the training ground, smell of trampled grass and bowstring wax. The murmur of other boys at practice fading, because this sentence matters more than all their noise. Arjuna bends his head. Drona looks at him and sees not merely a student, but fulfillment. The chance to pour everything he knows into one vessel so fine, it will ring forever. A teacher lives for that if he is honest. Not for salary, not for title, not even for royal favor. For the moment when knowledge meets the exact mind built to carry it. And yet, Drona is still Drona. Nothing in him is simple. His care is genuine. So is his ambition. He wants Arjuna magnificent because he loves him, because he admires him, because excellence deserves completion. And also because somewhere deep below all that, another face still flickers in memory. Drupada, a throne room, a laugh, the training grounds of Hastinapura fill with years. Children lengthen into youths, voices deepen, shoulders broaden. Rivalries harden into something more permanent. The games grow sharper edges. Practice wounds become badges. Pride becomes habit. Drona continues. When others rest, he refines. When others boast, he corrects. When princes complain, he gives them another drill, and the kind of silence that makes complaining feel childish. He makes them shoot from chariots over rough ground, makes them fight in rain, makes them learn the sounds of weapons before the weapons themselves. Sometimes he blinds their eyes and teaches their ears. Sometimes he spins them dizzy and demands accuracy anyway. Sometimes he says nothing for an hour except, no, again, no, again, no, again. It works. Their bodies begin to obey before their thoughts do. That is training at its deepest. The arrow released before fear can interfere. The turn of wrist that arrives without summoning. The stillness inside action. And over all this, Drona presides like a lean flame. At court, his place is secure now. Servants bow lower. Treasury clerks become polite. Those who once might have dismissed him now speak his name carefully. Ashwathama no longer drinks counterfeit milk. Creepy wears decent cloth. The household offerings at dawn include fresh flowers, proper grain, clarified butter enough for worship without calculation. These are not small things. When you have lived with lack, every sufficiency gleams. Still, sometimes in the evening, when the boys have gone and the grounds lie empty except for trampled dirt and a few forgotten shafts, Drona stands alone, looking at the targets. The last light catches in the straw. A breeze moves the pennants. From the city comes the smell of cooking rice and wood smoke, the murmur of evening life gathering inward, and he feels, perhaps, something close to satisfaction, not peace. He is not built for easy peace anymore, but shape. His life has shape again. He came to Hastinapura carrying a wound and a weapon. Now both are being sharpened. And if you stand beside him, there in the amber light, listening to distant bells and the creak of leather cooling after use, you can sense it. The boys think they are learning archery. Bhishma thinks he has found the perfect royal instructor. The city thinks a poor Brahmin has finally found his proper place. All true, and not the whole truth, because in Drona's hands, every lesson is also preparation. Every prince is also a future arrow. Every hour on the practice ground draws one old promise tighter. Not yet. That comes in time. For now, evening settles over Hastinapura. The heat loosens at last. Parrots shriek from the palace trees before going still. Servants carry lamps across courtyards, one trembling flame at a time. And on the training field, a teacher and his brightest pupil remain a little longer than the others, while the first stars wake above them, and another arrow rises cleanly into the dark. But Drona's love for Arjuna has a shadow, and the shadow has a name. Actually, it has two. Morning comes hard over the practice grounds. The dust is already warm. Bowstrings hum. Boys grunt. Miss, try again. Miss, better. Drona walks between them with his staff in hand, saying little, seeing everything. You can smell sun-baked earth, sweat, sesame oil from the prince's hair, and the faint sweetness of crushed kusa grass under sandals. Arjuna is there before dawn, of course. He is always there before dawn. If devotion could be taxed, Hastinapura would have been rich enough to buy the moon by now. He shoots in the half-light. He shoots after the lamps are lit. He shoots until the fingers of his right hand harden like horn, and the skin of his left forearm grows used to the snap of the string. Drona watches him with a face that gives away almost nothing. But there are moments, a slight pause, a softer breath, the kind of look a starving man gives a full plate, except this hunger is stranger. It is pride, yes, affection too, and something possessive curled beneath both. He has found the student he wanted, the one who makes promises feel possible, the one he has sworn to raise above all others. So when a boy arrives one day from the forest asking to learn, the answer is already waiting before the question is finished. The boy stands at the edge of the yard while princes practice. He does not belong to the city. You can see that at once. His clothes are rough. His skin is browned by open sun. He carries the smell of leaf smoke, river mud, and long roads. His hair is tied back simply. He stands alert, like an animal that has learned not to trust in closed spaces. This is Eklavya, a Nishada boy, forest-born, hunter blood, and his eyes are fixed on Drona with a kind of aching certainty. He bows, he gives his name and lineage plainly, no embroidery, no fancy court polish. Then he asks for what he came to ask, instruction. He wants Drona as his guru. He wants the science of the bow. The practice ground grows very still. The princes hear it. Some glance over with curiosity, some with amusement. Bhima probably has the look of a man wondering whether breakfast will be delayed by social procedure. A very real concern. Arjuna watches. Drona does not raise his voice. That makes it worse. He tells the boy no, not after a pause, not after kindness, just no. He says it cannot be. He says he teaches princes. He says the order of things is not so easily crossed. The words are formal, clean, dry as old wood. But refusal has a sound. It is the sound of a door closing from the inside. Eklavya hears it. You hear it too. It lands in the space between his ribs. For a moment, he stands as if he has been struck and is making a private decision about whether to show it. Then he bows again. That part matters. He bows again. No anger, no pleading, no public collapse. He folds the wound into himself and leaves with the dignity of someone carrying something heavier than he expected. The yard exhales. A few boys go back to practice. Someone laughs under his breath and stops when Drona looks over. Arjuna says nothing. Drona says nothing. But the thing has happened, and it is not done happening. Because the forest does not always obey the city. Weeks pass, then months. The training in Hastinapura grows sharper. Drona sets contests. Targets are moved farther out. Lessons become harder, stranger. He watches who tires first, who blames the wind, who listens, who merely waits their turn to show off. Arjuna keeps rising. Drona feeds that rise. He trains him separately, teaches him timing, silence, the reading of motion before motion begins. He tests him at night, in rain, in distraction, while servants shout, while drums beat, while other boys lose patience and begin to hate him just a little. Arjuna thrives on it. The more Drona demands, the more the boy seems relieved. At least demands are clear. People are much harder. One afternoon the princes go hunting. The forest outside Hastinapura is thick with heat. Cicadas rasp from hidden branches. The smell is resin, damp bark, wild jasmine somewhere far off, and the dry fur scent of animals that no men are near. You move with them beneath sal and shimshapa trees. Leaves crackle underfoot. The princes spread out. A dog runs ahead, all noisy confidence and no wisdom. A very dog-like decision. Then suddenly the barking stops, not fades, stops. The silence that follows is wrong enough to make everyone turn. The dog comes back through the brush with its mouth held open, not by fear, but by arrows. 7 shafts, neat, precise, placed so cleverly that the animal cannot bark, yet is not brought down. No torn face, no wild mess, just impossible skill. Even the forest seems impressed. The dog whines through its nose and blinks in confusion, as if asking whether this now counts as a bad day. The princes gather around it. Bhima stares. Yudhishthira goes grave. Drona's eyes sharpen, and Arjuna feels the cold first. You can almost feel it with him. Not fear, exactly. Something worse for a beloved student. Surprise. He has lived inside a promise. He has trusted it. And here, tied up in a dog's silenced mouth, is evidence that the world may have slipped around that promise while no one was looking. They follow the path of the arrows. Branches give way to a clearing. There stands Eklavya. He's older now by a season or two, and harder all over. The jungle has worked on him. His shoulders are stronger. His hands are scarred. His arms move with the smooth economy of long practice. Beside him stands a clay image beneath the trees. A statue, roughly shaped, mud-colored, weathered by rain, repaired by devotion. It is Drona. You see it and understand everything in a single breath. The boy had accepted the refusal, then refused the refusal. He had gone into the forest, built his guru with his own hands, and studied before that silent clay face every day. No royal grounds, no polished targets, no servants carrying spare quivers, just earth, patience, hunger, and obsession. He had made himself. That is the shocking part. He had made himself with Drona's name inside him. The clearing smells of wet clay, trampled leaves, sap, and the iron tang from worked arrowheads laid out on a cloth. Bees drift near some flowering shrub at the edge of the light. Sweat gleams on Eklavya's neck. He sees them and brightens, like a son seeing his father after a long absence. He bows low to Drona. He greets him with reverence. He says, by his manner and his whole trembling joy, that his guru has come. Arjuna looks from the clay statue to the real man beside him, then back again. This is the part no one taught him. A promise is simple until another person believes in it too. Drona asks questions. Where? Did you learn? Who taught you? And Eklavya answers with perfect innocence. He says Drona did. He says he shaped the statue, honored it, practiced before it, and through that devotion, learned everything he could. He says it as though the matter were obvious, as though discipleship is not a matter of paperwork, as though longing itself could count. Arjuna turns to his teacher. He does not make a scene. That would not be Arjuna. But he reminds Drona, softly, directly, you promised. That one promise has been feeding him for months, maybe years, and now here in the forest, it stands challenged by a hunter's son with mud on his ankles and greatness in his hands. Drona's face goes unreadable. This is the moment. You can feel it. The leaves hardly move. A hot wind slips through the clearing and carries the smell of dust and green things bruised under sandals. Drona looks at Eklavya, then at Arjuna, then at the statue made in his image. There are many kinds of pride, and several of them are dangerous. One kind says, I am the best. Another says, what is mine must remain mine. And another, quieter and more respectable looking, says a vow must be protected at any cost. Drona chooses quickly. He accepts Eklavya's claim. Yes, if the boy says he is his disciple, then let him be treated as one. And if he is a disciple, then he owes Guru Dakshina, teacher's fee. Eklavya lights up at once. Of course, he would give anything. That is the trouble with pure devotion. It never imagines the price will be itself. Drona asks for the right thumb, just that. The forest goes still enough to hear breath. Even the princes are stunned. You can feel the request strike Eklavya in the chest. He understands at once. This is no token, no bracelet, no deer hide, no pouch of coins. A bowman's thumb is not decoration. It is skill, future, identity, pride, all bundled in flesh and tendon. Drona has asked for his art. There are moments when time thins. This is one. Eklavya looks at his own hand, at the knife, at the clay statue, at Drona. No pleading rises, no protest. That may be the saddest thing in the clearing. He kneels before the image he made. The clay feet are cracked from weather and worship. Smears of old vermilion cling near the brow. Dried flowers lie at the base, brittle and faded. The boy takes the blade. His fingers shake once, then steady. You do not need every detail, only the feeling of breath held too long. The swift motion, the offering, the dark red spilling onto dry earth and dampening the clay at the statue's feet. He places the severed thumb there as though setting down a flower. Then he bows, still bows. The princes stare in horrified silence. Arjuna gets what he asked for, though perhaps not in the shape he expected. Drona receives the fee. The promise is safe again. Safe. What a word. Eklavya rises pale but composed, wrapping his hand as best he can. His devotion has not broken. That is almost unbearable to witness. He stands before the man who has ended his mastery and looks grateful for having been acknowledged at all. You are there in the clearing, tasting heat and leaf dust on the back of your tongue, listening to a wounded dog pant softly nearby, and the whole scene feels larger than any one person in it. Then Drona turns away. The hunting party leaves. The forest closes behind them. Cicadas begin again. Somewhere above, monkeys crash through branches, as if nothing of importance has happened. But something has. The princes carry it back with them. Arjuna says little. What do you say after a man has paid your security in flesh? Drona says little too. He walks with the composure of a teacher who has defended his word. Yet, if you had looked very closely, perhaps you would have seen that his victory does not sit lightly, or perhaps it sits perfectly. That is the problem. Both are possible. Back at the training grounds, the rhythm resumes. Morning drills, afternoon, contests, evening correction. But now there is a silence around certain things. No one speaks much of the Nishada boy, and still his absence remains, like a missing step in a familiar staircase. Arjuna practices harder, hard enough to drown discomfort. That is one way human beings survive. Drona pushes him higher. He teaches him secret releases, subtle balances, the breathing before the draw. He shows him how to loosen motion, how to strike by sound, how to read the tremor in a target before wind fully touches it. If excellence is a fire, Arjuna and Drona now feed it from both sides. The city begins to hear of it. Servants whisper, courtiers repeat stories over supper. Market women carrying vegetables pause to describe impossible shots with their hands. By the third retelling, arrows are bending around corners on their own out of sheer admiration. Soon, a public exhibition is announced, a great tournament. The princes will display what they have learned. Hastinapura wakes early on the appointed day. You can smell roasted grain, clarified butter, horse sweat, trampled marigold, and fresh swept dust before you ever see the arena. Crowds pour through the streets. Silks flash in the light. Brahmins in white. Merchants with heavy rings. Servants carrying water jars. Little boys climbing onto walls where they absolutely should not be. Old men elbowing for a better place and pretending they're above such behavior. Conscious sound, drums roll. The arena itself is broad and packed firm, ringed with stands and banners. Sunlight hits polished armor and bright parasols until the whole place seems to glitter. High above, vultures wheel lazily, which is not a reassuring omen, but they were invited by no one and do not care. You can feel the heat trapped in the sand. Hear bracelets clink, silk rustle, horses snort behind the holding lines. The royal family enters. Bhishma, like a carved pillar. Dhritarashtra, guided with care. Gandhari veiled. Kunti, watching everything with that still dangerous attention mothers have when their sons are about to make history or embarrassment. Sometimes both. Drona takes his place. Kripa beside him. The princes come out in order. There are cheers for the Kuru boys, louder cheers for some. Nervous politeness for others. Every large family has this problem, even royal ones. The displays begin. Yudhishthira shows steadiness from the chariot. Bhima and Duryodhana take up maces and circle one another with enough enthusiasm to make half the audience lean back at once. Their blows crash and ring. The crowd roars. Dust rises around them in pale clouds. They look, frankly, like two mountains trying to settle a personal disagreement. Nakula and Sahadeva display swordwork and horse mastery, elegant as mirror-bright steel. Other princes perform. Standards dip. Drums punctuate each feat. Then Arjuna enters. The arena changes. There is no other way to say it. He walks in and attention tightens. Drona watches from the side with the stillness of a man pretending he is not full of expectation. Arjuna salutes the elders, takes his bow, and begins. Targets swing, and he cuts them down before the swing is complete. He strikes moving marks from impossible angles. He looses shafts so quickly, the string becomes a hum, almost a note of music. He severs one arrow with another. He hits by sound. He wheels on the chariot and sends shafts in all directions until the air seems stitched with fletching. The crowd rises. You can taste dust in your mouth from the stamping feet. Hear the roar gather and break in waves. Garlands are thrown. Women in the stands lean forward. Old warriors nod despite themselves. This is what Drona wanted them to see. Proof. Public proof. Arjuna is not merely skilled. He is astonishing. And because happiness in the Mahabharata is allergic to comfort, this is exactly when another man arrives. A voice comes from the gate, not loud, just steady. It cuts through the noise because it does not ask permission from it. Heads turn. A warrior steps in, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, wearing armor that catches the light strangely, as if dawn itself had been hammered into metal. Earrings gleam against his face. He moves with total composure, not the composure of a courtier, but of someone who has had to make his own place everywhere he goes. This is Karna. You do not know him yet in full. Almost nobody here does. But the arena feels him. Sometimes a person enters a space and all the old arrangements start trembling. That is Karna. He looks at Arjuna and without fuss, without long speech, makes it clear that whatever Arjuna has done, he can do too. Then he proves it. One by one, he repeats the feats, the moving targets, the fast release, the impossible accuracy, the control. The crowd's cheers wobble, then split, then rise again in a different key. Confusion is exciting when it happens to someone else. Arjuna's face tightens. Drona's does too, though more carefully, because this is the second time. First, the forest, now the arena. Again, a stranger appears from outside the proper lines, carrying talent as though the lines never existed. You are standing in the heat with everyone else, sweat cooling at the base of your neck, and you can feel the mood shift from celebration to danger. Karna asks, by tone and bearing, for the right to face Arjuna directly. It is a challenge, a clean one. Steel has entered the room. Arjuna is ready. Of course he is ready. He has the look of a man who would duel the sun if it stared too long. But before the contest can begin, the old gatekeepers rush in. Kripa asks the question that can stop a sword faster than fear. Name your lineage, name your father, name your house, because a prince may duel a prince. A royal archer may face his equal. But if this stranger is not of fitting birth, then skill suddenly becomes a much less convenient thing. The silence after the question is terrible. Karna stands there, brilliant and armed, and for one moment, he does not have the one answer the arena wants. That is all it takes. The air changes. Whispers spread through the stands like dry grass catching a spark. A charioteer's son, someone says. A suitor's son. Not fit, not equal. The words move fast because they have practiced this route many times before. You can smell the sharpness of public shame. It has no scent of its own, and yet everyone knows it. Karna's face hardens. He has met this wall before, probably often. But public humiliation is a different beast. It likes witnesses. Arjuna stands silent, still burning to prove himself. Drona watches, and if there is unease in him, it runs deep. Because Karna is dangerous not only for his skill, He is dangerous because he exposes the weakness in the whole arrangement. What happens when genius arrives uninvited? What happens when excellence grows where no one granted permission? The arena waits, then Duryodhana laughs, not kindly, delightedly. He has found treasure. He sees at once what this man can be: a weapon, an ally, a friend, a crack driven into the polished certainty of the Pandavas. So he rises and does something magnificent and reckless. He makes Karna king of Anga on the spot, right there, immediately. Bring the water, bring the rites, bring whatever symbols are needed. If lineage is the problem, he will solve it with a crown. It is outrageous. It is politically explosive. It is also, in that moment, the only generous thing anyone has done for Karna all day. Servants scramble, priests are summoned, water is brought in golden vessels, words are spoken, the heat shimmers over the arena floor, and before the dust can settle, the unknown warrior stands as a king. Duryodhana beams like a man who has stolen fire. Karna turns to him with a gratitude so fierce, it almost looks like surrender. A bond is forged there in full view of everyone, not by philosophy, by humiliation answered with honor. You can feel it from the stands. Kunti feels it too. Oh, Kunti! Somewhere in that vast assembly, the mother who once set a newborn afloat now looks upon him and knows. The armor, the earrings, the face, her son, her firstborn, the one she let go before the world could name her shame. She says nothing. Her silence enters the arena too, though no one hears it. Drona remains where he is, teacher of princes, guardian of standards, maker of Arjuna, and now unwilling witness to another great talent standing outside the favored circle. The duel does not happen as it first threatened to. Too much has shifted. Too many elders are uneasy. Too many rules have suddenly become flexible in one place and rigid in another. The sun tilts westward. The noise of the crowd breaks into factions, some for Arjuna, some newly for Karna, some only for spectacle, which is the largest party in any kingdom, if you are being honest. Bhima, never known for choosing the softest available object, mocks Karna's origins and tells him to remember his place. Karna takes it like a man swallowing heated iron. Duryodhana answers with fury. The elders move to contain things. The arena gradually cools from near riot back into ceremony. But no one leaves unchanged. You don't either. As the crowd spills out into the evening, people argue before they reach the outer gates. Whose skill was greater? Whether a king made in an hour is still a king. Whether merit matters. Whether birth matters more. Whether one brave act of friendship excuses 100 dangerous ambitions. All of Hastinapura buzzes. The streets fill with the smell of evening cook fires and hot stone giving back the day's heat. Vendors shout, wheels rattle, temple bells ring somewhere beyond the palace walls. And through it all, two figures remain bright in the mind. Eklavya in the forest, kneeling before a clay teacher. Karna in the arena, standing before a crowd that would admire his skill only after arguing over his blood. Two men from outside the lines. Two men of terrible ability. Two men Drona could not fully welcome. Night settles over the city. On the practice grounds, abandoned targets tilt in the dusk. A few broken shafts lie in the dirt. Dust slowly resettles, where princes and challengers stood all afternoon, making the world less stable than it had been that morning. You can smell cooling earth now, and lamp smoke, and the faint metallic scent of weapons being cleaned somewhere nearby. Drona walks back alone for a time, not hurried, not easy. He has protected his promise to Arjuna. He has kept the order he serves. He has done what men call necessary. And yet the day has shown him something he cannot unsee. Talent grows in forests. Talent enters through gates unannounced. Talent is born where courts do not look. And every time it appears, he reaches not first for wonder, but for the lock. That knowledge walks beside him. So does the older wound, the old laughter in Drupada's hall, the old shame of not being enough by the world's measure. A strange thing has happened. The boy once turned away from a throne room has become the man standing at another door, deciding who may enter. He knows the taste of exclusion. He serves it now with perfect discipline. Ahead, palace lamps flicker in long rows. Crickets begin in the grass. A servant somewhere drops a bronze vessel and curses under his breath, proving that even in epic times, people remained gloriously themselves. Drona does not smile. He keeps walking. Behind him, in the dark beyond the city, the forest holds its own secrets. And somewhere under those trees, a young archer learns to draw without a thumb. Somewhere else, a newly crowned king lies awake, replaying every insult until it hardens into purpose. And in Hastinapura, Arjuna oils his bow in lamplight, still the favorite, still the chosen one, though now with two shadows stretching long behind him. They will all meet again. Not yet. For now, the night wind moves over the practice yard, carrying the smell of dust, neem leaves, and extinguished torches, while above the silent targets, the stars appear one by one. The sun is higher now. The practice yard has already turned hot. Dust sits on the prince's sandals, on the bowstrings, on Drona's dark hair and white cloth. Boys who will one day command armies are still breathing hard from drills, still young enough to glance toward the water jars every few moments and hope someone calls for a pause. No pause comes. Drona stands before them with the stillness that always means something's about to happen. The clatter from the palace kitchens drifts faintly over the walls. You can smell warm ghee, sun-baked earth, and the sharp green scent of crushed grass under hundreds of restless feet. Somewhere, a horse stamps and snorts, offended by existence itself. At last, Drona tells his students the fee he wants. Not gold, not cows, not silk, land or jewels. He wants Drupada, alive, bound, brought before him. The words fall into the heat and sit there. For a heartbeat, nobody moves. Even the Kauravas, who are usually eager to fill any silence with confidence, look surprised. The Pandavas glance at one another. Arjuna does not look surprised for long. He watches Drona's face, and he understands something the others only half understand. This is not a campaign. This is an old fire asking for wood. Drona speaks calmly. That makes it stranger. He reminds them that a teacher must receive his due. He says Drupada, king of Panchala, is the man he wants. He does not shout. He does not tell the whole story. He does not need to. The wound is standing there in broad daylight. You can feel it. The princes hear an order. Drona hears a door closing again. The Kauravas are the first to step forward. Of course they are. Duryodhana smiles the smile of a man already picturing victory before the horses are even harnessed. Dushasana stands beside him with that eager, dangerous energy he brings to every bad idea. Their brothers crowd around, bright with confidence, jangling with ornaments, smelling of leather, sweat, and the expensive oils, royal, boys are rubbed with from childhood. They tell Drona they will bring Drupada back at once. It is exactly the sort of promise young warriors love to make. Swift, loud, glorious, possibly thought through for nearly 7 breaths. Drona lets them go. Maybe he already knows. Maybe Arjuna already knows too. By midday, the courtyards of Hastinapura are roaring with preparation. Chariot axles are greased. Harness buckles are tightened. Conches call. Standards rise into the hard white sky. Servants run with quivers, shields, spare bowstrings, and water skins. The smell of horses grows thick and hot. You stand in the edge of that thunder and feel the ground tremble as the Kaurava princes ride out first, all noise and shine. They go like a storm that believes storms always win. Panchala waits for them. Drupada's kingdom is not a toy kingdom. It is old, disciplined, proud. Its walls know what war sounds like. Its soldiers know how to hold ranks in dust and glare. Drupada himself is no dreamy prince in a forest anymore. He is king now. He has armies. He has elephant corps. He has captains who do not panic because some royal boys from Hastinapura have arrived full of family prestige and dramatic posture. The Kauravas hit Panchala hard, and then Panchala hits back. By evening, the first news reaches Drona. Broken standards, scattered units, princes forced to retreat. It is not total ruin, but it is defeat all the same. And defeat smells a certain way, even when reported by embarrassed messengers. Sweat gone sour, dust clinging to wounded pride, the metallic edge of shame. Duryodhana returns angry and flushed, talking fast, blaming the ferocity of Panchala's resistance, the confusion of the field, the stubbornness of Drupada's men, probably the angle of the sun, possibly the moral weakness of the chariot wheels. The heat does things to people. Drona listens. He does not console them. He does not mock them either. That would almost be kinder. He simply turns his gaze elsewhere. Toward Arjuna, toward Bhima, toward the others who have not yet ridden, and suddenly the air changes. Because now it will be done properly. Drona arranges the next assault with the precision he reserves for things that matter too much. Bhima will strike with force where force is needed. Arjuna will move for the heart. The others will support, contain, break lines, prevent escape. You can almost hear the old Brahmin scholar hidden inside the war master, making patterns in his mind. This time, they ride out under a different kind of silence, not less dangerous, more. Dawn washes the road to Panchala with pale gold. Wheels crunch over dry earth. Dust rises around the chariots and hangs in the air like a veil. The leather grip of a bow warms quickly in the hand. Sweat gathers at the spine under armor before the morning is half grown. You are there in the column as it moves. Bhima, restless as a monsoon cloud. Arjuna, quiet. Yudhishthira, grave. Nakula and Sahadeva, sharp-eyed and composed. Their horses glossy and impatient. The sound is a whole world of war before war begins. Bridles chiming, axles creaking, hooves striking packed road. The low mutter of men, trying not to sound nervous. Somewhere behind them, a soldier sneezes, and another tells him, this is a terrible omen. A third says, every omen is terrible if you're losing. Reasonable point. Then Panchala rises ahead. Walls, banners, gates, and beyond them, Drupada. The first collision comes with noise enough to startle birds from the trees. Bhima goes in like a falling hill, where the lines are thickest. He breaks them. Chariots wheel, elephants trumpet, arrows pass in sheets through the light. But this is no wild scramble. Arjuna moves through it all, like someone reading a script only he can see. He does not waste motion. That is the thing. Others fight magnificently. Arjuna fights cleanly. He cuts the bow from one captain's hand, breaks the standard of another, drops horses without slaughtering everything around them, opens lanes, closes exits, turns Drupada's own formation against itself until the king is being separated, slowly and inevitably, from the men who should have protected him. This is what Drona has made, not merely an archer, an answer. The battlefield smells of churned dirt, hot leather, and the singed twang of bowstrings worked too fast. Dust coats the tongue. The sun climbs, metal flashes, commands rise and are swallowed by the larger roar. You can feel the pressure building around Drupada. He fights fiercely. Of course he does. He's no coward dragged from a couch. He stands in his chariot like a man born to command, bow arcing bright, driving back attackers with the old pride of Panchala in every shot. For moments at a time, he looks almost untouchable. Then Arjuna comes through. It happens quickly, too quickly for a king. One moment, Drupada is directing the field. The next, his defenders are cut away, his chariot checked, his movement boxed. Arjuna's arrows fall with terrible exactness, not frantic, not furious, certain. Bhima crashes near enough to turn retreat into impossibility. And then Drupada is taken, alive, just as ordered. That matters, because a man taken alive must continue through the humiliation in full daylight. They bind him, not like an animal, worse almost, carefully, publicly, with the efficiency of men following instructions. His ornaments are askew. Dust streaks the king's limbs. His breath is hard from battle. His eyes are bright with rage, and he is carried to Drona. You are standing in that assembly when they bring him in. The hall is cool after the field, shaded and faintly fragrant with sandalwood smoke. Outside, soldiers still move. Horses blow through their nostrils. Harness metal ticks in the heat. Inside, there is that sharp ceremonial quiet that courts produce when something deeply personal is pretending to be political. Drupada stands bound before the boy he once knew. No, not the boy. That boy is gone. In his place is the royal teacher of Hastinapura, honored by princes, obeyed by kings, clothed in clean linen, seated with authority. Drona has what poverty denied him now: respect, position, power, students who can seize a kingdom by afternoon and be back for supper if traffic is kind. And still, the old wound sits behind his eyes. For a moment, neither man speaks. You can almost feel time folding. Forest paths, shared lessons, a promise under trees. Then the throne room laugh. Then the years. Then this, Drona smiles. It is not a warm smile. That would be easier. He reminds Drupada of what was said long ago. Friendship belongs to equals. Drupada had told him. A king cannot be friend to a poor Brahmin. The words return now with all their old edge, polished by memory. Drona tells him he has therefore solved the problem. He takes half the kingdom. Now they are equals. Now, he says, they can be friends. The hall hears courtesy. Drupada hears revenge, spoken in a silk voice. There is poison in this kindness, not loud poison, refined poison. The sword poured into a gold cup. Drona does not destroy Drupada completely. He does something far more lasting. He leaves him standing, half a king, half restored, half broken. He returns one portion of Panchala and keeps the other, establishing his own right over land torn out of another man's humiliation. It is so neat, so measured, so infuriatingly controlled. Drupada is not granted the simplicity of total defeat. He is made to live in the shape of the insult, and you can see it land. That is the terrible part. Drupada's face does not collapse. He does not beg. A king knows how to wear silence. But something hardens behind his stillness, the way clay hardens in heat. The old prince, who once laughed at a poor friend, is gone too. What stands there now is a man receiving memory back with interest. Drona has collected his debt. He has also created another. The hall empties in time. Kings cannot remain bound forever, not if they are to carry resentment home properly. Drupada is released and permitted to depart with the half that remains his. The formalities are observed. Words are said. The wheel of dignity is patched enough to roll again. But if you watch closely, you can tell nothing has ended. A wind moves through the banners outside. It smells of dry reeds, horse sweat, and river water far away. Drupada leaves, Drona remains, and somewhere in the palace corridors, the princes speak of victory. Bhima laughs with satisfaction. Servants run to prepare baths. Armor is unfastened. Dust turns to mud in bronze basins. Young men who have just changed a kingdom ask what is for supper. This too is ancient warfare. World-shaking revenge by noon, lentils by dusk. Arjuna, though, does not celebrate like the others. He has obeyed his teacher perfectly. That matters to him. It always will. But he has now seen exactly what Drona wanted. Not conquest, submission, memory repaid. You stand at the edge of the training ground that evening as the sky softens to copper. The smell of wet earth rises where water has been poured over trampled dust. Someone in the kitchens is roasting grain. A conch sounds from a shrine. Drona passes through the fading light with the same measured stride he always has. Victorious, unsatisfied, he has finally stood above Drupada. Why then does peace not come? Because humiliation does not leave when you humiliate someone back. It only changes houses. Drupada carries it now. Back in Panchala, the king returns to divided power and undivided fury. He sits again in halls that are still his and not fully his. He sees officials bow. He sees captains await his order. He sees the map of his kingdom, and the missing half burns brighter than the party kept. The palace smells of incense, old stone, lamp smoke, and flowers beginning to wilt in brass bowls. Nothing is wrong that servants can fix. Everything is wrong. He remembers the forest boy he once knew. He remembers the dusty Brahmin at his court. He remembers being dragged in bonds. Worst of all, he remembers Drona being calm. Anger can meet anger. Pride can clash with pride. Calm revenge is unbearable. Days pass, then more. The wound does not cool. At last, Drupada turns where kings often turn when steel and pride have failed. He turns to sacrifice, to fire, to the old traffic between human grief and divine hearing. A great rite is prepared. Priests are summoned, altars measured, sacred wood is stacked. Clarified butter gleams in bowls of bronze. Black antelope skins are spread. Kusha grass is laid in careful lines. The air grows rich with smoke, sesame, ghee, and the thick sweetness of marigold, garlands warming under the sun. You are there as the yagna ground is raised. It is beautiful in the severe way sacred things often are. Geometric, ordered, every vessel polished, every mantra timed. Drupada does not come as a man seeking peace. He comes as a man asking fire to do what armies did not. He wants a son, not just any son, a son born for one purpose, to bring down Drona. Think of the distance traveled since the ashram. Two boys sharing a meal from one leaf plate. Now, one king stands before sacrificial flame, asking the universe for an executioner. The priests begin. Chants rise and fall like breathing. Ghee hisses as it strikes the fire. Smoke coils upward, blue and gold. Sparks whirl into the dusk. The heat is tremendous. It presses against the face, dries the lips, stings the eyes. Drums sound softly beyond the ritual ground, and temple bells carry over the evening air. Drupada watches. Does he remember Drona as a friend? Perhaps for a moment. Then the fire leaps high, and from that sacred blaze comes the child he asked for. Drishtadyumna. He emerges not as an infant mewling in swaddling cloth, but as a radiant, astonishing being already marked by destiny, already bearing the shape of a warrior. Firelight runs over him. The gathered priests stare. The king's breath catches. The whole sacrificial ground seems to tremble with the force of what has answered. A son for vengeance, a son with Drona's end in him from the first instant, and the fire is not done, because the blaze opens again, and from it comes a daughter, dark, luminous, impossible to ignore, Draupadi. She rises from sacrificial flame, with the scent of lotus and smoke around her, with beauty that will unsettle halls and hearts, with fate already braided into her hair. The night seems to pause around her, a daughter born of revenge, a daughter who will one day stand in another court, under another cruel laughter. Not yet, for now she is only new to the world, brilliant in the fire's afterglow, while priests whisper and flames settle lower in the pit. You can smell charred wood, hot butter, jasmine crushed beneath too many feet. The stars are coming out above Panchala, and an entire war has just inhaled for the first time. Drishtadyumna grows under the knowledge of what he is for. That kind of knowledge shapes the spine early. Children usually get lullabies. He gets a purpose sharp as a blade. Every weapon set into his hand carries one shadow before it. Drona. There is a strange cruelty in the world's weaving. When the boy comes of age, where is he sent to learn arms? To Drona. Of course, who else teaches princes like that? Who else turns raw skill into something terrible and precise? And Drona, knowing exactly who this youth is, teaches him anyway. Imagine the practice field. Imagine the dust. Imagine Drishtadyumna bowing before the very man he was born to bring down. Imagine Drona correcting his stance, adjusting his grip, watching the son of sacrificial fire draw the string back to his ear. No one in this world does things halfway. By now the chain is lengthening so far behind them that almost nobody can see its beginning. But you can. That is the eerie feeling in this part of the tale. One thing tugging the next, a child's promise, a beggar's shame, a teacher's revenge, a king's sacrifice, a fire-born son, a fire-born daughter. And somewhere ahead, beyond all this, a hall of carved wonders in Indraprastha, a Swayamvara, a marriage that binds 5 brothers to 1 woman, a dice game, hair seized in public, vows, exile, war. It all sleeps inside this moment already. You can feel it like thunder very far off. Back in Hastinapura, life goes on in its grand, dangerous way. Lessons continue, princes train. Drona remains honored, formidable, obeyed. If he lies awake at night, no one sees it. If victory tastes less sweet than he imagined years ago on the road to Panchala, he does not say so. The palace keeps moving around him. Servants trim lamps, stable boys argue over feed. Courtiers flatter the wrong men with admirable consistency. Somebody, somewhere, is always losing a sandal at exactly the wrong moment. The world never pauses because a grudge has ripened. It simply makes room for it at the table, and Drona goes on teaching. That may be the strangest part of all. He can still stand beside Arjuna and speak of focus, still guide Yudhishthira in discipline, still drive Bhima to patience, which is admittedly like asking a tiger to become interested in bookkeeping, still shape generations. A man can be deeply wrong in one chamber of his heart and astonishingly gifted in another. The night after the sacrifice in Panchala, the wind changes, cooler now. It moves over the altars where the last embers pulse under ash. Priests have gone to wash. The king has withdrawn. The new children are carried inside among lamps and whispers. You stand near the dying fire and listen. Crickets, a far jackal, the soft crack of settling wood. The smoke no longer rises in a fierce column. It drifts low and sweet, carrying ghee and sandal and the faint, bitter edge of what has been burned. Somewhere beyond these walls, Drona sleeps under another roof. Somewhere beyond that, Drupada stares into darkness and sees chains. And between them, invisible and unbreakable, the past holds fast. All of it because one boy believed a promise. All of it because one king forgot he had ever made it. All of it because one humiliated man finally found the strength to answer laughter with power. The debt has been collected. The account is not closed. It is only larger now, and as the sacred fire in Panchala sinks into red eyes beneath grey ash, two children born of vengeance breathe softly in the night, while far away in Hastinapura, a teacher who won at last walks alone through moonlit corridors, and the smell of smoke, dust, and old memory follows him wherever he goes. And then the war comes. The war that had been building since a boy mixed rice flour with water and called it milk. Dawn opens over Kurukshetra in layers of copper and dust. The field is so wide, it seems to have swallowed the horizon. Standards lift in the wind. Conchis answer each other across the plain. Horses stamp and toss their heads. Elephants breathe like bellows. The smell is strange and thick. Ghee from morning rites, sweat under armor, leather, hot metal, trampled grass, and that dry dust that gets into your teeth no matter how tightly you close your mouth. And there he is, Drona. White beard now, white robes beneath armor, eyes sharp as ever, but the face older than old, carved by vows, disappointments, and long memory. You see him not in an ashram courtyard, not beside a practice range, not watching boys shoot at painted targets. Here he stands among war drums, a Brahmin holding destruction in both hands. Bhishma has already fallen by this time, pinned to earth on his bed of arrows, still breathing, still watching the ruin continue without him. Once the grandsire is down, the Kaurava camp does what camps do when horror becomes routine. It reorganizes, men bow, orders move, rituals are performed, armor is buckled. Somebody somewhere is still arguing over where to tether a horse. War is like that. The world ends and someone is still worried about breakfast. Duryodhana turns to Drona. Who else is left with that much skill, that much authority, that much fear attached to his name? The old teacher is made commander of the Kaurava army, garlanded, honored, asked for the impossible. Bring Yudhishthira alive, not struck down, not scattered, captured. It is such a kingly request, so neat on the tongue. As if the battlefield is a courtroom and not a furnace. Drona accepts. Of course, he accepts. This court fed him when he had nothing. This throne gave his son milk, weapons, rank, respect, a place to stand in the world. Gratitude has wrapped itself around his ribs for years now. So has habit. So has pride. So has the terrible fact that when a man walks one road for too long, even the road to disaster begins to feel like home. Still, when he looks across the field, he sees them. Yudhishthira with his calm face, Bhima restless as a storm, Arjuna, dearest student, holding Gandiva, the twins, and behind them, Krishna, quiet and watchful, the kind of stillness that makes everything around it seem louder. You can feel the knot in it. Teacher against students, grandfathers against grandsons, friends against friends, family reunion from hell. Literally everyone is armed. The first day under Drona, the formations change. That is his gift. Not noise, not bluster, geometry. He arranges men the way a priest once arranged offerings. Lines curve, wings open, chariots lock into place, elephants anchor the center. Cavalry moves like dark water along the edges. From above, if any bird dared fly low enough, the army would look less like a crowd and more like a yantra drawn across the earth. He drives it forward. Yudhishthira becomes the target. Always Yudhishthira. Because if the king is taken, the game ends. But Arjuna is there, and whenever Arjuna stays near his brother, Drona's plan breaks on that bowstring. Again and again, the old teacher comes close. Again and again, arrows rise like rain. Again and again, the chance closes. The noise never stops. Conches, wheels grinding over stone and bone-dry soil, elephant bells, bowstrings snapping forward, men calling line positions, priests chanting blessings behind the ranks as if sound alone might hold back fate. You stand in that heat and feel how exhausting righteousness becomes when everyone on both sides thinks they still own it. Then another plan begins. At night, the Trigartas come forward, fierce and humiliated, and eager to turn themselves into a weapon. They take vows to draw Arjuna away. Fires burn low around them. Ghee hisses. The smell of kusa grass and smoke hangs over their oath like a second skin. They swear either Arjuna falls or they do. That is how war grows teeth, not only through steel, through promises. The next morning, they challenge Arjuna directly, dragging his attention away from the heart of the field. He cannot refuse. Honor will not let him. Skill will not let him. Destiny, if you want to call it that, definitely does not let him. So Arjuna rides away, and Drona sees the gap open. The sun is not yet at midday when he orders the chakra vyuha. You have to picture it from the inside to feel its cruelty. Not a wall, exactly. Not a circle, exactly. It moves, rotates, breathes. Layers of soldiers opening and closing, each ring feeding into the next, a spiral that welcomes you in and then forgets to mention the part where you never come out. Drona knows this formation completely. He knows where it bends. He knows where it narrows. He knows how panic blooms. Once a fighter enters and support is cut away behind him. He knows because he built such things with a mind made for precision. And that is the tragedy of brilliance. Sometimes it can design a prison as beautifully as it designs a lesson. The Pandavas see the formation and understand the danger at once. Arjuna is absent. Time is short. The army cannot simply stand there and admire the problem. Then Abhimanyu steps forward. 16, maybe younger in the face when the light catches him right. Arjuna's son, Subhadra's son, Krishna's nephew. He has that bright warrior energy young men carry before the world has fully explained its terms. He knows how to break into the chakra vyuha. He learned that much before birth. listening from the womb as his father spoke. The ending of the lesson never reached him. A detail so small. A child hears half a secret. Years later, thousands pay for it. Abhimanyu says he can enter. If the others follow closely, they can support him. That is the hope. That is always the hope. He rides forward. You go with him now. Dust lashes your face. The first ring parts under his assault. Arrows flash from his bow in clean, bright arcs. Standards topple. Horses rear. His chariot cuts into the turning formation like a spear into water. For one breath, it works. For one shining breath, youth and courage seem enough. Then Jayadratha holds the opening behind him. The Pandavas try to follow. They are blocked. Chariots jam. Elephants wheel. The ring closes. Abhimanyu is alone. Inside the formation, the air feels different, tighter, hotter. Sound gets trapped there. The clang of weapons comes from every direction. The smell is dust and horse foam and the hot iron scent of too many men fighting too close together. Above it all, banners turn in the wind like they are enjoying themselves. Abhimanyu does not fold. That is the hard part. If he had broken quickly, the heart might survive it. Easier. But he fights magnificently. He brings down princes. He scatters veterans. He moves with his father's grace and something of Krishna's wild confidence too, the sort that belongs only to the very young and the very divine. Chariot after chariot comes against him. He answers all of them. You can almost hear the old teachers noticing. This one is dangerous. This one is extraordinary. This one must be stopped. Drona is there among them. Karna is there. Kripa, Ashwatthama, Dushasana's son. Great warriors closing in around one bright center. Rules that were spoken so proudly before the war begin to thin out like mist in summer. Abhimanyu's bow is broken. He takes another. That one goes too. His horses are brought down. His charioteer falls. He fights on foot, sword in hand, then with a wheel, then with sheer fury, as if youth itself can batter open the walls around him. But the walls do not open. One by one, his weapons are stripped away. The circle tightens. At last he falls there in the press of kings and teachers and veterans, a boy swallowed by a machine built by adults. And something changes in the war. The field does not go quiet. That would be too merciful. But the sound changes. Even the wind over Kurukshetra seems to know a boundary has been crossed. You can feel it in the camp that night. The cook fires burn low. No one jokes loudly. Armor is cleaned in silence. Horses chew their feed with tired jaws. Somewhere, a wounded man mutters in his sleep. Somewhere else, someone is trying to recite a prayer and keeps losing the words halfway through. The smell of the camp is smoke, boiled grain, medicinal herbs, stale sweat, and grief. News reaches Arjuna. He returns to hear what happened to his son. Not in fragments, in full. Who held the line? Who blocked the entrance? Who surrounded the boy? Who struck when fairness had already left the field? His grief comes like weather, not theatrical, not loud for long, worse than loud, focused. He takes his vow against Jayadratha, and the next day, the war becomes a race against sunset. Everyone feels it. Everyone breathes inside that deadline. Drona fights that day too, still driving toward Yudhishthira, still building walls inside walls, still acting as commander because once a man has put on that role, he keeps wearing it even while his soul begins to chafe underneath. The days grind on. Kurukshetra becomes less a field than a season of the world. Morning rites, armor tied, conches blown, advance, dust, heat. Retreat at dusk. Count the missing. Sleep if you can. Drona grows more terrible. There is no other word for it. Perhaps grief hardens him. Perhaps duty does. Perhaps the old wound at his core finally finds a battlefield equal to its hunger. He fights with a force that makes ordinary men seem like dry leaves in monsoon wind. Chariots break before him. Infantry lines open. Kings who once boasted over wine now look over their shoulders when his banner turns their way. And then come the celestial weapons, not every hour, not every skirmish, but enough. He invokes knowledge gathered across a lifetime of austerity, study, discipline, inheritance, sacred power, turned loose in war, fire, wind, force that shivers through entire divisions. Men who never had any quarrel with Drona at all are taken up in that storm simply because they stood in the wrong place when an old master decided to end a line. You stand at the edge of one such assault and feel the earth tremble under running feet. Dust rises in sheets, horses scream, not for long, just enough to make your spine go cold. Soldiers throw themselves flat. Some pray, some forget every god they have ever known. The air tastes scorched. A standard catches fire and collapses in sparks. This is what it has come to. A Brahmin born for recitation and rite has become the most frightening engine on the field. Even his allies begin to fear the scale of him. Even his enemies begin to understand something awful. He cannot be overcome cleanly, not by strength alone, not while he still wants to fight. By the 15th day, the Pandava camp feels stretched to breaking. Drupada falls, Virata falls. Great pillars of their side are brought down in the crush. Drishtadyumna, born from sacrificial flame for one purpose only, is still alive, still hunting the purpose of his own birth. Bhima rages, Satyaki rages. Arjuna is a blade wrapped in exhaustion. Yudhishthira carries the war on his face now. Even his calm looks tired. Krishna watches. He has been watching from the first conch blast. Watching when men thought they were making choices cleanly. Watching when rules dissolved, when vows became traps, when each outrage invited the next one like a guest. Now he watches Drona, and he knows the old teacher will not stop for pleading. He will not stop for fatigue. He will not stop because the side he serves has wronged too many for too long. He will not stop because too many threads bind him. Gratitude, pride, duty, habit, his son, his reputation, his own refusal to step out of the role he entered years ago. So another road opens, a hard one, the kind that leaves everyone stained. Near the middle of that day, Bhima comes upon an elephant named Ashwatthama. Imagine the absurdity of it for a moment. Armies crashing together across sacred earth, kings falling, divine weapons blazing, and somewhere among all this is an elephant with the same name as Drona's son. War is full of dreadful little jokes. None of them are funny when they arrive. Bhima brings the elephant down. Then he does exactly what has been decided. He lifts his great voice over the field and calls out that Ashwatthama has fallen. The cry travels across dust, across wheels, across spear points and banners and panicked horses. Men hear it and repeat it because human beings have always carried rumor faster than arrows. Ashwatthama is down. Ashwatthama is gone. Ashwatthama is dead. Drona hears, and the world narrows. It happens all at once and very slowly. He has been in motion all day, commanding, invoking, striking, driving forward. Then that name enters the air, and the whole machinery inside him catches. His son, not a prince, not a student, not a king, his son. the boy for whom he first swallowed his pride and walked to an old friend's palace, the boy whose hunger turned humiliation into destiny, the boy whose future justified everything. You can almost feel the reins slacken in his hands. He does not believe it immediately. Why would he? Ashwatthama is fierce, almost impossible to bring down, and the battlefield lies as easily as it breathes. Still, the sound has reached him, and once heard, it cannot be unheard. He turns to those near him. He questions them. He searches faces. Some do not know. Some know and will not say. Some have heard the cry and nothing more. None of that is enough. So he looks for the one man whose word has never bent. Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, the king whose truthfulness has become almost physical, like a second armor. Men trust him because the world has taught them they can. Drona drives toward him. The field between them is chaos. Chariots half splintered, shields overturned in dust, broken banners dragged by wind. The light overhead is harsh and white. Sweat trickles under armor. Mud made from churned soil and spilled water clings to wheels. A dead horse lies still, already gathering flies. The smell is hot earth, smoke, and exhaustion. You are there when Drona asks, not loudly. That would make it easier. He asks, as a father asks, when he is afraid of the answer before it comes. Is his son truly gone? Yudhishthira knows the plan. Krishna has already pressed it on him. Bhima waits. Drishtadyumna waits. All of them know that the old teacher cannot be stopped while he keeps his weapons in hand. Still, the moment hangs, because one sentence can split a life. Yudhishthira speaks. He says Ashwatthama is dead, and then, lower, he adds the truth that makes it not quite a lie. The elephant, but the field swallows that second part. Conscious sound, wheels grind. Krishna makes sure the louder world wins. The softer truth disappears into dust and noise. Drona hears only what grief is prepared to hear. Ashwatthama is dead. That is enough. A strange calm falls over him then. Not peace, nothing so soft. More like the instant after a lamp is blown out, when the wick still glows red before turning black. His bow lowers. The man who had filled the day with destruction suddenly seems emptied. His shoulders, which had carried command like iron, sink under an invisible weight. He is very old now, older than the battlefield, older than the vows that trapped all these kings, older even than his own anger. You see his face, and, for a breath, the years peel back. The boy at Bharadvaja's ashram, the poor husband in the leaking house, the father watching flower water on a child's lips, the humiliated friend in Drupada's court, the teacher beside a practice field, the proud father of a son who had everything he himself had lacked. All of him arrives at once, and then he lets go. He sets aside his weapons. Around him, men shout. Some urge him to keep fighting. Some do not understand what they are seeing. Some understand too well and are frightened by it. A warrior laying down arms in the middle of Kurukshetra feels less like surrender than like the earth shifting under your feet. Drona sits down in his chariot. He closes his eyes. He draws his mind inward, away from dust, away from banners and horses and the cries of kings. The battlefield blurs around him, but within that small circle of stillness, there is something almost like an ashram again. Breath, spine straight, mind fixed. Chai, old disciplines return, older than revenge, older than ambition, older than war itself. The wind moves across the field and touches his white hair. The sun burns overhead. A vulture circles once, far above, as if even carrion knows to wait. You can hear the small sounds suddenly, the jingling harness of a horse, shifting weight, the creak of leather, the flutter of a torn banner, the rattle of an arrow against a chariot rail. For one impossible moment, Drona is no commander at all. He is a sage's son. He is trying to leave. Some say his spirit rises then, bright and clean, seen by those with the sight to see it. Some say the great ones, watching from beyond human eyes, know the instant he withdraws from the field. However you picture it, the sense is the same. The fighting man has stepped back. What remains is the still form in the chariot. But the war does not honor stillness for long. Drishtadyumna is already coming. Of course he is. How could he not? He was born from flame, with this name in his mouth before he could even speak it. All his life he has carried one purpose, like a brand between the shoulders. Kill Drona. End Drona. Complete the offering that called him into the world. And now the chance stands before him, seated unarmed, eyes closed. The son of Drupada approaches the teacher, who once chained his father. The air around them feels charged. Men on both sides see it. Some cry out to stop him. Arjuna, when he understands what is happening, cannot bear it. He does not want his teacher ended like this, for all that has happened, for all that Drona has done. Love does not vanish on command. It clings. That is one of the things making this war unbearable. But love arrives too late on battlefields. Drishtadyumna mounts the chariot. Sword in hand, no need to linger on the motion. It is enough to know that the purpose of his birth is fulfilled there. The old teacher's end comes not in the bright exchange of equals, not in a final lesson, not even by the hand of the student who loved him best. It comes from the fire Drupada lit years ago in a hall heavy with smoke and vengeance. Drona falls, and with him falls something else harder to name. A memory, perhaps, of the world before everything became repayment. Across the field, the news runs fast. Drona is gone. Drona has fallen. The commander is no more. Men who feared him breathe for the first time that day. Men who loved him stare as if they have misplaced the sun. The Kaurava lines shudder. The Pandavas gain relief and lose something they had once honored. Both things can be true together. In this war, they often are. Ashwatthama, the son who was not dead, will hear soon enough. That grief is still coming. For now, stay here. The afternoon light has begun to change. Dust turns golden at the edges. Shadows lengthen under chariots. The heat loosens its grip by one small finger. Somewhere, a conch blows retreat. Somewhere else, another officer is already shouting new orders because war, monstrous thing, always wants to continue. You stand in the churned earth and look at where Drona sat. The place is not marked by miracle. No lotus blooms, no thunder cracks, just a chariot, a fallen standard, the trampled ground, the smell of hot wind and old smoke. And yet, the whole field feels different. Because the man who could make blades of grass into arrows, who could turn princes into legends, who could teach a child to hear the path of a shot in darkness, has reached his end not through lack of skill, but through the oldest weakness in him, love for his son. It began there, in a way, in that poor house, in that hunger, and it ends there too. You can feel the circle close. As evening comes, the armies begin to pull back. Wheels carve deep tracks in the softened earth. Men search among the fallen for brothers, cousins, kings, servants, enemies they once knew by another name. Water skins pass from hand to trembling hand. The campfires will burn again tonight. Rice will boil. Priests will mutter prayers over the exhausted and the stunned. Someone will clean armor that no longer belongs to anyone. Someone will sit beside a horse and cry into its mane where nobody can see. The smell of dusk at Kurukshetra is gentler than it should be. Cool dust, smoke from cook fires, crushed neem leaves, wet cloth, oil on leather, a faint sweetness from garlands bruised and dropped in the morning, now half buried under mud. If you stand very still, the wind almost lets you imagine another place. An ashram at dawn, river water cold around the ankles, a boy repeating mantras until the sounds become breath. Another boy beside him, both too young to know what kingdoms do to friendship, a teacher watching students in afternoon light, the soft thud of practice arrows in packed earth. That world is gone now, but it was real. And on this evening, after Drona's fall, it hovers for a moment over the field, like the last color in the sky, before night takes everything into one shade. The soldiers withdraw, the standards lower, the cries fade. And somewhere beyond the smoke, beyond the silence growing over Kurukshetra, beyond the grief of sons and students and enemies, it seems as though an old Brahmin finally steps out of armor he was never meant to wear and walks, at last, into a place where no one is hungry, no one is humiliated, and no child ever has to pretend that flour and water is milk. So after all of that, after the ashram and the palace door and the thumb and the war, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? It feels, at first, like Drona's life should be simple. A gifted man is insulted. He rises, he becomes great. Then greatness curdles. But Drona is not simple, and that is exactly the point. He begins in a world of river water, prayer smoke, and discipline, a Brahmin child, a sage's son, the kind of boy who should have grown into ritual, teaching, and quiet authority. Instead, from the beginning, another current runs through him. Weapons, mantras that do not merely bless, but strike. Skill that belongs as much to the battlefield as to the sacrificial fire. That split never leaves him. And you can feel it all through his life, like a thread pulled too tight. He is always two men at once, the keeper of sacred knowledge and the man who wants power enough to protect his own, the teacher and the wounded child, the Brahmin and the warrior he was never supposed to become. That is where we begin to feel his tragedy. The friendship with Drupada matters so much because it is the last clean thing in his life. Two boys eating from the same plate, sleeping under the same roof, racing through forest paths with dust on their ankles. In that season, friendship feels stronger than rank. A prince can promise half a kingdom and mean it. A poor Brahmin boy can believe him completely. Then the throne appears, and everything changes. That part of Drona's life is not only about betrayal, it is about what happens when a wound is left alive inside the heart. Drupada's rejection does more than embarrass him. It gives Drona a shape. From that day on, nearly everything he builds is built around that injury. His ambition, his discipline, even his tenderness has iron in it. You can feel how dangerous that is. Not anger in a passing moment, not sorrow that comes and goes. A wound you begin to organize your whole life around. Because once that happens, even your gifts begin serving the injury. Then comes Ashwatthama. And this is where Drona stops being only proud and starts becoming painfully human. A hungry child can strip away every philosophy a man has ever learned. You can almost hear the thin little laugh of that boy running around with flower water on his lips, happy because he thinks he has finally tasted milk. It is such a small scene. No battlefield, no conch shells, no kings, just a father watching his son celebrate something false because the real thing is out of reach. That is enough to break a man. That moment stays with you because poverty is not only lack, it is humiliation. It is watching dignity fail at the exact place where love needs it most. Drona's learning is real. His discipline is real. His Brahminhood is real. But none of it fills a bowl. And desperation changes people. Not always all at once. Sometimes gently, quietly. One compromise at a time. That is part of Drona's sorrow. He does not wake up one morning and decide to become hard. Hardness grows where helplessness lived too long. Then Eklavya enters the forest clearing and Drona's wound turns outward. That scene hurts because Drona should have understood him. A brilliant boy outside the gates, a boy with hunger, talent, and no permission, a boy reaching toward greatness from the wrong side of the world's walls. And yet, Drona becomes the wall. That is one of the deepest truths in his life. Suffering does not automatically make a person compassionate. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes the person once denied entry becomes the one guarding the door most fiercely. Eklavya offers devotion. Drona answers with a demand that cripples his gift. And the lesson there is not that Drona is some easy villain. It is sadder than that. He has become so bound to his promise, so attached to Arjuna's place, so shaped by a world of rank and approval that he can no longer bear excellence blooming where he did not authorize it. That is what bitterness does when it sits too long in brilliance. It teaches genius to become narrow. Then comes Drupada in chains. This should have healed something. Drona had waited for that moment for years. The king brought low. The old insult answered. The scales balanced. But revenge has a strange emptiness to it. He repeats Drupada's own logic back to him. He takes half the kingdom. He forces equality through humiliation. Outwardly it looks neat, almost elegant. A wound answered in matching form. But justice and revenge are not the same thing. Justice restores order. Revenge repeats pain. And Drona, in that moment, does not end the old injury. He passes it on. You can feel karma moving there. Not karma as a little reward and punishment machine. Not some tidy cosmic bookkeeping. Karma in the older, heavier sense. A web of action that keeps generating consequence. One humiliation leads to another. One act of pride gives birth to another fire. Drupada's pain becomes sacrifice. Sacrifice becomes Drishtadhyumna. Drishtadhyumna waits on the battlefield for years, like a seed under dry earth. And when the season comes, it blooms. That is karma in the Mahabharata. Not quick, not simple, but exact. Then the war gathers all the unfinished things. By the time Drona stands at Kurukshetra, he is already carrying too much. Debt, loyalty, pride, love for his students, love for his son, gratitude toward the throne that fed him, attachment to his own name, attachment to Arjuna, attachment to Ashwatthama, attachment to the idea that he can serve a broken order without becoming broken himself. He cannot. This is where Dharma becomes painful. People often hear Dharma and think it means a clean rule, a simple duty, a bright road. But the Mahabharata almost never gives it to you that way. Dharma is your role, your obligation, the truth of what you owe. But in this world, those obligations collide. Drona's dharma as a Brahmin called him toward restraint, sacred learning, and spiritual discipline. His dharma as royal teacher tied him to princes, court, and war. His dharma as a father demanded provision. His dharma as a dependent of Hastinapura bound him to the hand that had once fed his house. And because he never truly resolved those duties within himself, they tear him apart. You can see it most clearly in the war. A Brahmin raining destruction, a teacher helping trap a boy, a father fighting beside men he knows have chosen wrong. Drona does not fall because he lacks power. He falls because power cannot mend in a division. That is where Maya comes in. Maya is not only illusion in the sense of magic or unreality. It is the veil that makes us believe some outer thing will finally settle the unrest inside. Recognition, position, security, revenge, honor. If Drona could reclaim dignity, then he would be at peace. If he could be acknowledged, then the old insult would stop burning. If his son were provided for, if his students were unmatched, if Drupada were humbled, if his place were secure, then. But the peace never comes. That is the illusion. Worldly victory can solve a practical problem. It can fill a house, it can win a kingdom, it can silence an enemy, but it cannot heal an unhealed heart by itself. Drona gains rank, wealth, students, fame, fear, and command. Still the wound remains, just dressed better. And so the end comes in the only way it really could. Not through lack of weaponry, through grief. His son's name breaks him. Of course it does. Beneath all the ambition, all the skill, all the terrible choices, there is still that father from the hut. Still the man whose heart once cracked over a child wanting milk. That man never disappeared, and that is why the storytellers treat him with such strange tenderness. They do not ask you to excuse what he did. They do not pretend he remained pure. He did harm, real harm. He failed boys who trusted him. He served a cause he should have resisted. He let old bitterness steer too much of his life. But they do not throw him away. Instead, they show you how a great man can be bent slowly by humiliation, by love, by need, by pride, by the desire to be seen and never again looked down on. That is the resolution in Drona's life. Brilliance is not enough. Discipline is not enough. Honor is not enough. If a wound becomes your secret master, even your virtues begin working for it. And the Rishis, with enormous compassion, wanted you to see one more thing. Not that Drona was monstrous, not that he was doomed from the start, but that he was human in the grand, tragic way the Mahabharata understands humanity, capable of devotion and pettiness, greatness and blindness, love and terrible error, all in the same chest. That is why he stays with you, because somewhere in him, uncomfortably close, you recognize the part of every person that once one old hurt finally made right, and the epic gently lays its hand over yours and says, "Be careful. Do not build your whole life around the place where you were once denied. It is too expensive. It costs students, it costs friends, it costs sleep, it costs the quiet center of the soul." Drona's life, in the end, is a long, sorrowful reminder that the deepest battles are not always fought with bows. Sometimes they are fought in the hidden chambers of the heart. And if they are not faced there, they will be fought everywhere else. Morning has long since passed. Evening settles softly. You stand again by the old well. The stones still hold the day's warmth. A breeze moves through the courtyard. Somewhere nearby, A horse shifts its weight. Somewhere farther off, a bell rings once and is still. The water below keeps its silence. And in that quiet, one memory remains. A hand reaching down, a blade of grass lifting what had been lost. Not force, not rank, not a king's permission, just skill, breath, attention. The kind of knowledge that passes from one life into another and goes on living there. So the light grows dim, the dust settles, the voices fade from the practice ground, and somewhere, beyond courts and battlefields, and all the old injuries men carry, the lesson remains. A steady hand, a listening mind, an arrow finding its way. And if you stay here a little longer, in the hush between sounds, you can almost feel it still. Not the wound, not the war, only the stillness after, only the shape of learning, rising gently from the dark. And now the battlefield is quiet. The dust settles. But somewhere, in a courtyard that exists outside of time, a teacher is still teaching. Go back to the well. Not the throne room, not the fire altar, not Kurukshetra under its black birds and torn banners. The well. You can see it if you stand still long enough. Afternoon in Hastinapura. Dry light on old stone. A few princes crowding the edge, annoyed in the way boys are annoyed when a game is interrupted. The ball is down there, a ring too. The water glints far below, cool and unreachable. Then a lean Brahmin steps forward. His clothes are dusty, his beard is rough. He does not look like the answer to anything, but his eyes are steady, very steady. The air smells of sun-warmed brick and trampled grass. Somewhere nearby, horses stamp and flick their tails. You hear bangles on a servant's wrist, the faint clink of metal, a kite wheeling overhead. He bends. He picks up a blade of grass. That is still the miracle, even after everything. Not the great formations, not the celestial weapons, not kings brought low. Just that, one blade of grass between his fingers. He speaks over it softly. Then he lets it fly. It drops into the well like an arrow. Another follows, then another. Thin green links joining one impossible act to the next, until the lost thing rises from darkness and comes back into the light. That image stays. It stays because it is Drona without the throne room wound. Drona, before revenge, takes the reins again. Drona as pure skill, pure focus, pure astonishment made visible. A man with nothing. A man who could still do that. Years pass, kingdoms burn. Students become fathers, enemies, ghosts. The old teacher falls at last on a field that has taken too many names and too many sons. But the hand that lifted the ball from the well does not vanish. It lingers. In village tales told under neem trees when the night wind is kind. In temple courtyards where old men still speak his name with a little respect in the voice. In training grounds where a child misses the target 10 times, then hits it once, and the instructor's face lights up despite himself. You still hear the name, Dronacharya. It has traveled far beyond the man's own breath. It belongs now to teachers with patient eyes and sore backs, to coaches at dawn with whistles around their necks, to the stern master who makes you repeat the same movement 50 times because on the 51st, finally, your body understands. It belongs to discipline, to transmission, to the sacred, ordinary miracle of one human being showing another how. And that feels right, not complete. Drona was never complete, but right, because he was not one thing. He cannot be folded neatly into villain or saint and put away like winter cloth. He loved deeply. He favored unfairly. He gave everything to excellence. He guarded status when he should have opened the gate. He could be noble in 1 hour and small in the next. Very human, uncomfortably so. You feel that complexity settle, not like a stone, but like evening dust on skin. Warm, fine, real. The light is softer now. The war has gone. The conches are silent. No more shouted vows. No more wheels sinking into broken earth. No more royal rage dressed in silk and gold. Just a courtyard. Just the late smell of dust and sandalwood. Just the scrape of a sandal on packed ground. A boy stands with a bow that is slightly too large for him. His fingers are unsure. His shoulders are tense. He's trying very hard not to look foolish, which of course makes him look a little foolish. That part never changes, no matter the age, no matter the century. And in front of him stands the teacher, not the commander, not the humiliated friend, not the man asking for a king in chains, just the teacher. He reaches over, adjusts the boy's elbow, turns the wrist a little, presses 2 fingers lightly between the shoulders so the spine remembers how to rise. He tells him to breathe first, always breathe first. The arrow will not listen to a panicked hand. You are there beside them. You can smell the bowstring wax, the faint smoke from a nearby lamp, tamarind from some distant kitchen, evening jasmine opening somewhere beyond the wall. The teacher steps back. The boy draws. For one small moment, everything in the world becomes simple. Wood bends, string tightens, breath steadies. Eye finds its line. Release. The arrow flickers forward. Maybe it strikes true. Maybe it lands low in the dust. It almost does not matter, because the real thing has already happened. Understanding has passed from one life into another. And the teacher sees it. That look on his face, that quiet, unguarded joy, is easy to miss if you're only watching for greatness. But it is there. No ambition in it, no old hurt, no hunger to settle accounts, only delight, only recognition, one mind awakening a skill in another. That moment existed too. It was real. So let the rest grow distant now. Let the palace doors close. Let the war banners come down. Let the arrows sleep in their quivers. Keep only this: a courtyard washed in amber light, dust floating like gold in the air, and a teacher watching a student learn the shape of his own hands. Somewhere beyond the walls, the evening bells begin. A breeze moves through the trees, and from the dark mouth of an old well, if you listen closely enough, a single blade of grass still rises.